Good evening. I'm Kalamazoo City Deputy Manager Jeff Chamberlain, and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Kalamazoo City Commission of Tuesday, July 6th, 2021. Tonight's meeting is being streamed live on the City of Kalamazoo's Facebook page, as well as the City of Kalamazoo's YouTube channel. You can listen in on tonight's meeting by calling area code 269-552-6425 and entering meeting ID number 954-4367-0558 when prompted. And you can also leave a comment for tonight's meeting by calling area code 269-226-6573. And we'll turn it over to Mayor David Anderson.
Thank you, Deputy City Manager Chamberlain. It's a pleasure to see everybody tonight, and all those who are participating by viewing or listening online. Thank you for being here. So I'm calling this business meeting of the Kalamazoo City Commission for Tuesday, July 6th, 2021 to order. Clerk Moss, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Cunningham,
Here in the great city of Kalamazoo.
Commissioner Hess,
Me?
Yes,
Commissioner Hess,
Oh, okay. I'm present in the city of South Haven, Michigan.
Commissioner Knott,
Here, Kalamazoo.
Commissioner Pradle,
President in the city of Kalamazoo.
Commissioner Urban,
Here in the city of Kalamazoo.
Vice Mayor Griffin,
Here in the city of Kalamazoo.
Mayor Anderson.
here in the city of Kalamazoo. Thank you so much. For our opening ceremony tonight, I don't believe we have anybody here for invocation. Is that correct at this point? So in lieu of that, I would like to ask for just a moment of reflection and silence before we start this meeting. And I just want us to spend a moment recognizing all those who have suffered from the results of gun violence, and to lift them in our hearts and look forward to a time when that is less a part of how we live together. So if we could just have a moment. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. We have two proclamations on our agenda for this evening, recognizing great things. And the first one is the Parks and Recreation Month proclamation. Sean Fletcher, Director of Parks and Recreation for the city, is here to receive the proclamation, and it will be read by Commissioner Urban. Commissioner Urban, I believe you are muted. There you go.
There we go. A proclamation. Designation of July as Park and Recreation Month. Whereas park and recreation programs are an integral part of communities throughout this country, including the City of Kalamazoo Parks and Recreation Department. And whereas our parks and recreation are vitally important to establishing and maintaining the quality of life in our communities, ensuring the health of all citizens, and contributing to the economic and environmental well-being of a community and region. Whereas parks and recreation programs build healthy, active communities that aid in prevention of chronic disease and also improve the mental and emotional health of all citizens. And whereas parks and recreation programs increase a community's economic prosperity through increased property values, expansion of the local tax base, increased tourism, the attraction and retention of businesses, and crime reduction. And whereas parks and recreation areas are fundamental to the environmental well-being of our community. And whereas parks and natural recreation areas improve water quality, protect groundwater, prevent flooding, improve the quality of the air we breathe, provide vegetative buffers to development, and produce habitat for wildlife. And whereas our parks and natural recreation areas ensure the ecological beauty of our community and provide a place for children and adults to connect with nature and recreate outdoors. And whereas the U.S. House of Representatives has designated July as Parks and Recreation Month, and the City of Kalamazoo recognizes the benefits derived from parks and recreation resources. Now, therefore, on behalf of the City of the 53rd City Commission, I, David F. Anderson, Mayor of the City of Kalamazoo, do hereby recognize July 2021 as Parks and Recreational Month for the City of Kalamazoo. Signed, David F. Anderson.
Amen. Thank you, Commissioner Urban. Director Fletcher.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Urban, and thank you, Mayor and Vice Mayor and all commissioners for your support for the work that we do in the city. I happened to be at Kick Pool this afternoon, took my daughter, and it was jam-packed, and it was great to see all the kids cooling off in the pool. But I just want to take a second, and I know I get to be on camera, but I don't do a lot of the heavy lifting. I have to thank our city administration for the support, and also our team of professional recreation folks, our Deputy Director, Patrick McVeary, our Recreation Manager, Ashton Anthony, our Park Supervisor, Preston Taverna, and everybody else that makes things happen, like Movies in the Park and Super Rec and Summer Camp. There's a lot going on right now, and there's a big reason as to why July has been dedicated as Parks and Recreation Month. It's probably the busiest time of year for us because everything is happening. And there's just so much good stuff happening and a lot of good things on the horizon for Parks and Recreation. Again, I want to thank you for your support and for all the people that take part in our programs and just have a good time enjoying the park. So thank you again, and have a good night.
Thank you, Mr. Fletcher, the City of Kalamazoo Director of Parks and Recreation. Next, we have a proclamation, which will be read by Commissioner Hess, on a topic that is dear to her heart. This is a proclamation recognizing Summer Learning Day. And Commissioner Hess, why don't you take it from here?
Thank you. As you well know, education is dear to my heart, and it begins with youth. This is a proclamation for the 2021 Summer Learning Day in Kalamazoo, Michigan, of July 15th, 2021. Summer is bursting with possibilities for all youth to grow, learn, and thrive. High-quality summer learning and enrichment opportunities are more important than ever in 2021. Across our community, summer programs are adapting and innovating to ensure youth and their families can access quality summer learning opportunities and critical supports to take back summer. Whereas Summer Learning Day is a time to reflect on the importance of keeping youth learning safe and healthy every summer, ensuring they return to school in the fall ready to succeed for the year ahead. And whereas a wide array of public agencies, community-based organizations, schools, libraries, museums, recreation centers, camps, and businesses in our community contribute to the well-being of youth through summer programming. And whereas there is still a role for summer youth employment programs to engage older youth, whether virtual or in person, with the support of businesses and community leaders, our youth can learn, gain real-world experience, contribute to their community and economy, and experience safer environments through summer jobs and internships and/or volunteering opportunities. And whereas high-quality summer learning experiences are a critical component of our collective effort to ensure all youth heal, grow, and thrive as they take back summer. Now, therefore, the Kalamazoo City Commission does hereby proclaim July 15th, 2021 as Summer Learning Day in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and do commend this observance to all our citizens. Signed, David F. Anderson, Mayor of the City of Kalamazoo.
Thank you, Commissioner Hess. And I know Meg is here from KidNet. Thank you for joining us. And I presume you have some words as well.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Hess, Mayor, City Council, Commissioners, for your ongoing support of the out-of-school time sector. Young people around the city of Kalamazoo selected this theme of taking back my summer. We are leaning out of the narrative of loss, learning loss, COVID loss, damage. We are leaning into the narrative of all the things that young people have learned about themselves, others, and the world around them. We believe that adults and young people have learned more the last 16 months through the multiple pandemics than some of us have in a lifetime. And we want to acknowledge that learning, and we want to support young people as they take back their lives, their community, their neighborhoods, their schools. We have 42 organizations that are primarily in person this summer, serving thousands of young people. And the feedback we've gotten is that everyone is excited to be back in person, offering high quality summer programming throughout the city and the county. If there are families who still need programming for their child or young adult, they can go to our website, www.kydnet.org. We have a program finder that lists the specific details on all 42 programs. And we also have hard copy of our program finder. If you know of any families that need to plan out their child's or young adult's summer, we still have that available. So we want to say thank you again to the city for your ongoing support. And we are all about the business of taking back our summer. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Bligowitz. I appreciate that. And please pass our gratitude on to all 42 providers. That's fantastic work, important work, and we really, really appreciate it. So thank you, and thanks to everyone that joins in this effort. Commissioners, you have before you the agenda for tonight's meeting. Are there any changes commissioners would like to see? If I don't see anything at this point, let me know if I miss anybody. All right. Next item is communications. City Manager Ritzma.
None, Your Honor.
Thank you, Manager Ritzma. So we have some public hearings tonight, and Deputy City Manager Chamberlain, will you share the phone number for public comments regarding, this will be item E1, a public hearing to rezone properties in the area of Patterson, Edwards, North, and Verberg Park. Are we going to do these separately, Deputy City Manager Chamberlain, or do you want to announce the number for all three at this time?
Mr. Mayor, this is Deputy City Manager Jeff Chamberlain. I'll announce the number right now, and we have a recording system where people can select which public hearing they'd like to leave a comment for. And then we just play whatever messages are in that box. And so we will give the number right now. People can call area code 269-226-6573. And I will let the city manager read this item into the record. And then if we have any public comments, we'll play those.
Thank you so much, DCM Chamberlain. So there are three items, public hearing. It's E1, E2, and E3, and it's the same phone number for all.
Correct.
Right. So I would now like to open a public hearing to receive comments on an ordinance to rezone properties generally located south of Patterson Street, east of Edward Street, north of North Street, west of Verberg Park / Walbridge Street, from limited manufacturing, which is M1, to live work 1, which is LW1, and live work 2, which which is LW2, and from residential mixed use, which is RMU, with Riverfront Overlay District 1 and Natural Features Protection Overlay, to Limited Manufacturing M1 with Natural Features Protection Overlay District. Quite a mouthful there. I hope everybody hung with that. Is there a staff presentation on this?
No, there isn't, Your Honor, but we do have planning staff here if there are any questions.
Thank you, Manager Ritzma. Any questions for planning staff at this point? Seeing none, Deputy City Manager, are there any public comments on this site? I'm sorry, did I miss somebody?
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Mayor. I had,
I'm sorry, Commissioner Pradel.
yeah, I just wanted to, I know we've heard this in a number of presentations, but maybe for people who are listening here for the first time tonight, would you mind, or anybody from planning staff, I don't know if it's you, Christina, but just share some of the existing challenges that exist with the current zoning. And so what this rezoning is hoping to remedy. I think that'd be really helpful for the public to hear that.
Of course. Thank you, Commissioner Pradel. So the bulk of this project is rezoning approximately 75 parcels that are currently M1 or limited manufacturing. The challenge with that district is that the area is no longer manufacturing and parts of it never were. There are quite a few, about a third of that area is existing residential structures. Residential structures are not a permitted use in manufacturing, so new residential is not allowed. Existing residential cannot be expanded. The manufacturing district really is intended to support production and industrial uses. Again, not necessarily what fits with the character of that area. This area has smaller lots, many of them residential size, small commercial size. And between what exists there now and what is envisioned in the North Side Neighborhood Plan for goals of supporting housing to meet all residents' needs and to support businesses by North Side residents, particularly those by African Americans and low-income residents, the manufacturing district doesn't support those goals. Where Live Work 1 and Live Work 2 are very flexible districts that allow a mix of uses, including residential and a variety of types. And it better fits both the lot size and the street types, which are smaller streets, not what you normally would think about for an intensive industrial use, and support buildings that are of the scale that fit with the neighborhood.
And would you be so kind as to identify yourself and your position, just as?
I apologize, my mistake. This is Christina Anderson, and I'm the city planner.
Thank you, Planner Anderson. Other questions for staff on this? Seeing no other questions, Deputy City Manager Chamberlain, are there any public comments?
Yes, sir. We have received some, and these are the comments that people have selected for this first item.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Abby Horine. I live in Kalamazoo. I am calling in reference to a couple that I know that is currently working on adopting their child. And the child's guardian ad litem is Daniel Veen, which is an attorney in Kalamazoo. And they recently had a court hearing, and he made some comments that were very homophobic in nature, and I'm very upset by it. And I'm hoping that Kalamazoo as a county can come together to help support our LGBTQ families and youth that are being singled out by this gentleman. I as well was actually affected by him personally. I adopted my son 9 years ago, and he was RGAL at that time, and he also made numerous comments to me during that time 9 years ago. So anyway, I'm hoping that this can be a topic of discussion for our Kalamazoo County boards, and hopefully we can make some progress in that department. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Sade Chambers. I'm a resident. I live in the city of Kalamazoo, and I'm calling in support of the rezoning for the north side, to transform that area, to let residents be able to renovate their homes and to do different projects, to allow businesses to come into those neighborhoods, to really revitalize that area. This new zoning will be awesome for both the residents and for business owners, and it'll help bring life back to that area. I'm in full support, and I hope that as residents of this city that we can also count on our commissioners tonight to make the right decision and to vote yes for approval to help move this zoning forward and to help us move better with our Kalamazoo goals, with our neighborhood plans, and just to help us move forward as a whole. I hope that we can count on your full support tonight, because this will be an awesome decision for both residents and also for new business owners. This will be a great way for us to move forward with our city. Thank you. Good night.
Hi, my name is Remy Harrington, and I am a resident of Kalamazoo. I live in the city. I'm calling about agenda item 1E1, which is the ordinance for the rezoning of the properties on the north side, the northeast side of Kalamazoo, the South Patterson, West Wallbridge, Verberg Park, and East Edwards, north of North Street. I know that these neighborhood plans painstakingly came into fruition, and that the representation and the guidance from those plans were super involved. And I'm not here to make an assessment about that. I know that this was a long time coming, but I do want to say that maybe some of the funding that you guys are asking for a comment about, funding allocations for this infusion investment that the city of Kalamazoo will be receiving, I think that it would be ethical and appropriate for some of this money to go towards creating transformative economic justice for the participation of small Black businesses that are representative of people and residents that live in the neighborhood, to participate in the development projects that you're hoping will be a part of this rezoning effort. We know that the relationship that Black people have with the economy, specifically in Kalamazoo, the city of Kalamazoo and Kalamazoo County, we have wealth disparities that surpass the national average on many levels. And I think that it's a very disingenuous effort without to create economic opportunity without this approach. It's unethical and it's disingenuous. And so you have got to couple this rezoning effort with opportunities for participation in the economy of citizens for people that have the types of wealth disparities that my people have. So I just want to say that I think it's amazing to be able to create opportunities for economic development. I'm a developer and I'm for it. And we also need economic justice in that conversation as well. Thank you.
Good evening. This is Toby Hannah Davies, and I do live in the city. I'm co-chair of the Isaac and TRHT Housing Task Force with Stephanie Hoffman, the executive director of Open Doors Kalamazoo. But I'm speaking for myself to let you know how pleased I am about the proposed rezoning of the properties on the north side between Patterson and Norris. I am so appreciative that these rezonings support infill housing and rehab of older homes, and that they support the goals of the North Side Neighbors Plan. I was at the City Commission meeting on the night that the North Side Neighborhood Plan was presented to you with the new live-work zoning category. And I remember how impressed I was that North Side neighborhood leaders were the ones giving the presentation, not city staff, and how there was no opposition expressed by any residents. thank you to city planners for listening so well to the residents' wishes and needs. I'm very hopeful that this rezoning will be a very helpful step in creating more of the housing we need so badly, that's safe, attractive, and affordable to people at 50% and 40, 30, and even 20% of area median income. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, that's the last public comment for this item.
Thank you, Deputy City Manager Chamberlain. If there's no more comments, I'd like to close the public hearing. Commissioners, the recommended action is a motion to adopt the ordinance. Is there a motion?
I move that.
Motion made by Commissioner Urban,
Support.
supported by Commissioner Hess. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, I guess I will add one comment, and that is that I fill a seat, which is the mayor's seat on the North Side TIF district. And so we've been talking about this. We had a presentation by Planner Anderson there as well. I can tell you that there's a lot of interest in the neighborhood, and I think the opportunity is there. And as commenters suggested tonight, we are going to want to continue to be involved and figure out how we're going to help make sure that positive things happen there. So I appreciate everybody that called in on this item. Clerk Moss, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Hess,
Yes.
Commissioner Knott,
Yes.
Commissioner Pradle,
Yes.
Commissioner Urban,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Griffin,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham.
Yes.
Thank you, commissioners. The ordinance is adopted. Next is item E2. So I would now like to open a public hearing to receive comments on an ordinance to rezone 203, 207, and 211 Wall Street from commercial office CO to Live Work 1 LW1. Any staff report on this, Manager Risma?
No, Mayor.
Questions for staff from commission? Commissioner Pradle.
Sure. City Planner Anderson, just had a couple questions for you. So it lists the zoning changes and how it allows buildings to be closer to the front of the property line, limits heights to 3 stories. There's a one line that says allows flexibility and maximum impervious coverage based on use. Can you describe what that means a little bit?
Sure, and I'm going to add one other item
Yes.
if you don't mind. Again, this is Christina Anderson. I'm the city planner. So there are 2 items that are important with this change. And one is similar to what we just discussed with the north side rezoning, is that CO does not allow residential on the ground floor. This area has quite a bit of residential and commercial surrounding it, and was designated in the future land use plan as a mix of, we call it neighborhood edge, so mix of uses. And CO does not allow that, even though that is absolutely in the character of the area. As it relates to the impervious coverage, Live Work 1, Live Work 2, Node, or downtown districts, our more recently created districts, were all created looking at existing lot sizes in Kalamazoo to understand how our rules of maximum coverage, which means how much of building and pavement can be on a lot, so like the ratio of grass open where water can, pervious areas where water can be absorbed versus where they can't, were created with understanding our lot size and the land use very carefully to make sure that they work with the lots they would likely be placed on. We had found in the past that some of our existing zoning districts didn't have that, and we ran into problems, and people were looking for variances or needed to adjust their structures because there was a mismatch between the permitted use, the district, and the lot they were going on. So that is what that is referring to.
Other questions, Commissioner Pradle? Right. Any other questions for Planner Anderson or other staff? I don't see any other questions from commission. Deputy City Manager Chamberlain, are there any public comments specific to this item?
Yes, Mayor, we do have a couple of public comments on this one. I'm sorry, we had no public comments on this one. I was one public hearing off, so there are no public comments.
All right, thank you so much. So with no public comments, I would now like to close the public hearing. Commissioners, the recommended action is a motion to adopt the ordinance. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Commissioner Hess,
Support.
supported by Commissioner Cunningham. All right, thank you, sir.
Mr. Mayor, this is Jeff, this is Deputy City Manager Jeff Chamberlain. I apologize. I think we had a technical issue and I think we do have a couple comments for this item.
Okay.
My apologies.
No problem.
We are double checking that. We just don't want to miss anybody.
Sure.
Second, please.
Conversation about authorizing a school resource officer at Norris High School. I'm grateful for the level of deep thought and questions that were presented by the commissioners. Though, with regards to the lack of data, I know that Commissioner Urban mentioned that it's hard to run a control, as in we can't let a school year go by with no one at the school. I'm unsure of what he meant by no one or running a control. Just because it hasn't been done at Norris doesn't mean that there isn't an abundance of data that has been collected about school resource officers and the effect of their roles in the lives of Black and Brown youth in districts that are comparable in size and demographics of our own. The idea of the lack of data and having no other choice is a mindset of stagnation and conformity. Generally, I'm very bothered by the lack of innovative thinking that occurs when it comes to supporting our youth, doing the things the way that we've always done shows a lack of care and creativity. The fact that there was pushback around having no other choice is very concerning, and I know that where there is a will, there is a way. The abundance of data that I mentioned earlier definitely points to negative educational and life outcomes for Black and Brown youth, period. There just is no other interpretation of that data. It is my hope that you all will look towards some alternatives and really dig deep and do some research and make sure that our students have the best outcomes possible, including looking at ways to disrupt the school to prison pipeline. Hope you all have a great afternoon.
Good evening. This is Toby Hannah Davies again. I also want to express my support for the rezoning in the Vine neighborhood on Wall Street. I don't live in either the Vine neighborhood or the North Side, but as someone who cares a great deal about affordable and attractive housing in this community, I want you to know I'm personally very supportive because the new live-work zoning supports infill housing and rehab. I am delighted by the 2 brand new houses built by KNHS in the Vine neighborhood. I love how they fit into the neighborhood so well, but also have solar panels. That's so helpful for people's high utility bills. It's so helpful for creating housing that's affordable. Thank you again for listening so well for residents, to residents' needs and wishes, and creating a zoning category, or several actually, that respond to residents' requests. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Mayor, that was the last of the public comments for item E2.
Thank you so much, DCM Chamberlain. So I believe I can let the motion by Commissioner Hess and support by Commissioner Cunningham stand. Is that Commissioner Pradel?
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Mayor. Are we going to have a chance for comment on this one?
Oh, yeah, we can have discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So is that acceptable? We can let the motions stand that were made?
Yes.
City Attorney Robinson?
Yeah. Yes.
Yes, okay, there we go. So the motion was made, I'll just reiterate this, to basically, well, I read the thing before. It's about these properties on Wall Street. So motion's made and supported. Clerk Moss, will you please call the, oh, I'm sorry. Now is an opportunity for discussion. Commissioner Pradel, go ahead.
Sorry, the only reason I jump in is because there are times where we forget to ask for discussion. So I just want to make sure we have that opportunity. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So just a couple things that are notable, and this is just hats off to City Planner Anderson and your team. I noticed in the packet how it was talking about during the community input opportunities for this rezoning that it mentioned about how there was resident input to save a bur oak tree. And although insignificant as that may sound, it is very indicative to me about the level of care that your team takes in listening to the public and listening to residents in that area. And so I really want to thank you and your team for listening and finding opportunities to hear people out and things people care about, even if it's a single bur oak tree in that neighborhood. Also, a lot of times we talk about zoning and different types of zoning like Live Work 1 or Live Work 2. And if you go into our packet, if you Google search Kalamazoo City Commission agenda, and you go to tonight's packet for July 6th, if you go to page 10 and 11, there's a really great breakdown that explains what zoning is and what the different zoning types that we approved tonight are. And so I'd encourage people to go check those out if you have quite a little further questions about those as well. But just wanted to give some kudos and to you and your team for that input.
Very good points, Commissioner Pradel. I appreciate that. Any further discussion? See, Commissioner Urban.
Well, I just wanted to piggyback on what Commissioner Pradel was saying about the care that was taken by the neighbors in seeing that bur oak tree was preserved. For those of you all in the audience who are new to Kalamazoo, bur oaks are special. They were the original tree in the prairie that existed where downtown Kalamazoo now is. It was all flat land, grassland with occasional bur oaks popping up here and there, some I'm sure quite large. They withstand prairie fires because they have a very quirky bark. And so it's very, bur oak trees in prairies are very characteristic of how this part of Michigan used to look before white man came along. And so to honor a bur oak is I wouldn't call it a religious experience, but it's a very pleasant reminder of our past and our ecology. So thanks to all who made that protection happen. That's all.
Thank you, Commissioner Urban. Any other discussion? Clerk Moss, please call the roll.
Commissioner Knott,
Yes.
Commissioner Pradel,
Yes.
Commissioner Urban,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Griffin,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham,
Yes.
Commissioner Hess.
Yes.
Thank you, Commission. The ordinance is adopted. Next is item E3, and I would now like to open a public hearing to receive comments on an ordinance to establish First Baptist Church at 315 West Michigan Avenue as a single resource local historic district. Is there a staff presentation on this item?
No, Your Honor, we do have a couple of representatives from the church and also Sharon Ferraro from our historic district office is present as well.
Thank you, Manager Ritzma. So I know that Pastor David Nichols is here, architect Nelson Nave, and Sharon Ferraro from the city. Do you have a presentation that you were intending to make?
I'd just like to take just a quick moment and let everybody know that establishing a historic district is a process that is 10 steps. and it usually takes somewhere between a year to a year and a half, sometimes 2 years to do it. This historic district specifically was requested by the First Baptist Church congregation and the Kalamazoo Nonprofit Advocacy Coalition, who have recently purchased the church. And in cooperation, they're keeping the annex building on the west side filled up with all sorts of nonprofit organizations. It's a huge asset to downtown Kalamazoo for our nonprofit networks. So they had asked the Historic Preservation Commission to prepare the paperwork that would allow them to become a local historic district, because at least in Michigan, that is the strongest protection you can possibly get for a historic building well into the future, long beyond when this congregation and the people that are establishing this district will still be around. They've been here since the 1850s, and they hope that their building will be here long after they are gone. So that's all I have to say. Be happy to take any questions anyone has.
Any questions for the team that's here from commission? Seeing none. Deputy City Manager Chamberlain, are there any public comments?
There are no public comments that have come in, Mayor, on this item. And if Pastor Nichols or Mr. Nave had anything to say, this would be their opportunity to say that.
This is Pastor Nichols. I'm not on video because it says the host has stopped it. So I would need to be, okay, now I can start my video. Okay. I have been the pastor at First Baptist. This action that's being taken. You may already be aware that we have transferred the title of our building to the KNAC, Kalamazoo Nonprofit Advocacy Coalition, because we realize there are a number of repairs that need to be made that are really beyond the ability of our congregation to handle at this point. And we do not anticipate that even if we grow, we will ever grow back to completely fill the building. And so we are delighted that we have a number of other nonprofits that are using the building right now and that are committed and at the same time make it a useful building for a number of nonprofits. So my congregation is very pleased to see this happen.
Thank you, Pastor Nichols. Nelson Nave, did you have some comments you wanted to make?
Yes, sir. Thank you. I'm Nelson Nave. I live in the city. I'm the architect on the board of directors for the KNAC. KNAC is the new owner, as you heard, of First Baptist Church. The group was formed to save the church and its school addition from demolition. As you know, we lost 2 churches in our beloved fountain around Bronson Park in the last 2 to 3 years. This building is 1853. It's in good shape, but needs renovation in several ways. It is the oldest such structure in the city and the county. KNAC and this building will further the city's Imagine Kalamazoo 2025 plans by featuring food, drink, and entertainment on the street level of one of the downtown's 2 priority streets. There will be concerts, performances, small businesses, nonprofits, thriving here. We are honored to be part of this Kalamazoo Local Historic District, and we will follow the Secretary of Interior standards for historic preservation, and we will preserve a great piece of Kalamazoo history. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nave. Are there any direct questions for the team here presenting on this item from commission? All right, seeing none, I would now like to close the public hearing. Commissioners, the recommended motion is a motion to adopt the ordinance. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Commissioner Hess, supported by Commissioner Knott. Thank you, Commissioner Knott. Is there any discussion? Commissioner Pradel.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I was going to just mention and give thanks to a number of people who are involved with this project, right? Most notably the plan that we read in our packet, I believe was prepared by Pam O'Connor, if I'm not mistaken, Sharon. We'll call it her pandemic project, if you will. You hear about people who like renovate their home or, write books during the pandemic, but, Pam took it upon herself to put this plan together to help support basically what we're voting on. So anyways, I just wanted to lift that up and mention that. And yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Pradel. Any further discussion? All right, then, seeing none, Clerk Moss, please call the roll.
Commissioner Pradel,
Yes.
Commissioner Urban,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Griffin,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham,
Yes.
Commissioner Hess,
Yes.
Commissioner Knott.
Yes.
Thank you, Commission. The ordinance is adopted. Now is the opportunity for general public comments. Deputy City Manager Chamberlain, do we have any general public comments for tonight?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we do, and we'll begin playing those right now.
Hello, friends. My name is Francis Vicioso, racial justice and equity advocate and parent of a Norris student. I'm calling in regards to the approval of a memorandum of agreement with Kalamazoo Public Schools or KDPS to provide a school resource officer for the 2021 to 2022 school year. I'm grateful for the level of deep thought and questions that were presented by the commissioners during the last during the last business meeting. I'm also thankful for Dr. Ray Chaudhry's presentation during the committee of the whole at 5 o'clock today. While I understand that KPS has already made the decision to have a school resource officer at Norris, and that the question is whether KDPS would be the one providing someone to fill that role, I do believe that an ongoing conversation about the role of SROs in our schools is extremely important. There was a talk of lack of data during the last commission meeting, and while this is true for this district, there is an abundance of data outlining the effects of school resource officers on youth in schools and districts across the country that are similar and comparable in size and demographics to our own. Also, I heard the idea of having no other choice, as in we have no choice but to have a school resource officer, and that is just not true. That shows a mindset of stagnation and conformity and a lack of innovative thinking about what may be best for our youth, and it's extremely concerning to hear a commissioner say that. Well, you know what they say, where there is a will, there is a way. And the abundance of data points point to negative educational and life outcomes for Black and Brown youth with ongoing interaction with SROs in school. There is no doubt about those data points. Well, I'm pleased to hear that data will be collected for the first time regarding school resource officers, but the public will be keeping a close eye as to who is collecting the data, how it is interpreted, and what comes of the results. I'm hoping that you all will keep each other accountable and make sure that the data is accurate and serves the purpose of supporting and benefiting our youth. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Matt Porco. I live in Oshtemo Township. I recently finished my 22nd year of teaching at Norris, and both of my children are current students at the school. During my time at Norris, I've had the privilege to work with thousands of students. The overwhelming majority of our students make the right decisions each day. And when students make the wrong choices, the vast majority of the time, we as a staff can effectively intervene and work to steer these students back on a safe and productive path. However, history has shown us that in a school the size of Norris, at times, students' actions will get to the point where the intervention of a trained law enforcement officer is appropriate. During these times, I believe it would be much safer for our students to have that person be a school resource officer that understands the building and has built a relationship with our student body, rather than whatever officer answers a call and enters the building. Additionally, as someone who has been through live shooter training and has taken students through this process, I feel much safer as a teacher and a parent with a school resource officer in the building. While we know the chances of any particular school experiencing an active shooting situation is relatively small, we also know that in those situations, every second and minute is precious in order to effectively respond to these horrible situations. If there had been any moment in my career that led me to believe that the presence of the school resource officer at Lloyd Norris was in any way a detriment to our students, I would not be calling in tonight. I truly believe they keep both the adults and young adults in the building safer, and we are better off for their presence. Thank you for your time.
Good evening. My name is Chris Aguinaga, and I'm the proud principal of Lloyd Norris High School. I reside at 1251 North 5th Street in Kalamazoo. I'm calling tonight to express my hope that the Commission will approve the Memorandum of Agreement with the Kalamazoo Public School District to provide Lloyd Norris with a school resource officer. I have been honored with working with school resource officers from the Kalamazoo Department of Public Safety for more than 6 years and look forward to working with them in the future. All the school resource officers I have had the privilege of working with have been highly trained and professional. SROs embed themselves into the school culture, building relationships with staff and students so they can truly get to know the people they are there to help keep safe. In my time working with school resource officers from the Kalamazoo Department of Public Safety, I can count on just one hand the number of complaints I've ever received. Instead, the benefits of their presence in the building is immeasurable. From being a medical first responder to a firefighter to being a law enforcement presence, their value to the school and me as the building leader is too great to be measured. If something was to happen at Lloyd Norris, it required police response. The power of knowing the students and the working relationship that the SRO has with the school administration is vital for student safety. Please help me keep the students of Lloyd Norris safe. Please vote to approve the Memorandum of Agreement with the Kalamazoo with KPS and place KDPS SROs back in the hallways of Lloyd Norris. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Casey Coker. I live in the city of Kalamazoo. I am a resident of the Stewart neighborhood. I am calling in regards to the proposed transfer of these meetings from virtual to in-person. I'm concerned about the accessibility of moving these meetings to strictly in person. I believe that over the last year and a half, we've seen a significant increase in commission meetings and engagement from the community. Myself included, because of the virtual option, being able to watch on social media or on YouTube while doing other things in the home, staying engaged in the community conversation, being able to call in, being able to watch commission meetings virtually, I think is important for accessibility and community engagement and continued transparency. So my hope is that this commission will consider a hybrid model where the community can continue being engaged virtually through video, social media, any way that we can have continued transparency and engagement. Thank you so much for considering this. Bye-bye.
Hi, my name is Jessica Glynn. I'm a resident of the city of Kalamazoo, and I'm calling about the commission resuming in-person meetings. We have seen throughout the last year and a half of the pandemic a dramatic increase in the ability of the community to participate in a meaningful way in commission meetings. This has meant increased accessibility to the commission and commissioners of a broad swath of the community that due to work commitments or family commitments would not be possible if we were to return in person. Additionally, the fact that children 12 and under are still ineligible for the vaccination means that returning in person for community members who wish to participate through public comment or even commissioners who have children themselves are put in a position where they may, even vaccinated, contract COVID-19 and pass it to their unvaccinated children. Until every single person in our community, including children, are eligible for vaccination, it is dangerous to resume in-person meetings, and we should consider as a whole having a broadcast option for all community members to participate, even post-returning in person and post-COVID. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Tina Tabulog, and I live in the city of Kalamazoo. My daughter, Morgan Smith, attends Lloyd Norris. I've had one other also go to Lloyd Norris, and my son will be going to Lloyd Norris next year. I called to voice my opinion about security personnel in the school itself. Honestly, as a parent, I find it a lot more. What's the word? I just think that it's vital for our kids to feel safe, and for there to not be, and for, I feel like it's the kids feel safer having security there. I feel like just having their presence pretty much stops some of the kids who might cause more problems from causing the problems, because they know that there's someone there who's going to, take care of it if they get into fights or if they bully. Coming from a mother of a kid who's been bullied, I appreciate having them there to have my kids back. And it's happened in the past where they have actually been there for my daughter. She's really small in size, so she tends to get picked on just like I did. But I think just their presence alone encourages kids to not act out. Or, just like you go down the street, you see a cop, you slow down. Same thing. Their presence merely makes it so that the kids are less likely to misbehave, and I think it also helps teachers feel more secure, knowing that there's someone there if they can call if something happens in their classroom. I've known several teachers through the years who've had certain things happen in their classrooms. Some of them have been very public, some have not. But I just honestly think with the way kids are now, they're bigger than us, the majority are. And it just really makes it so that we just feel safe. I feel safer sending my kids to school personally, knowing that there is someone there keeping an eye on things. So I would really hope the city would go ahead and approve helping with the security within the schools, because, it's kind of scary if they're not there. So if you could please, vote yes and go ahead and let us keep security, that would be really great. Thanks. Have a great meeting.
Hi, my name is Shona Espinoza, and I live in Kalamazoo City. I was calling because we feed at MLK Park every Saturday at 3 o'clock. I have not seen no one that sits on the commission board at all to come down and help, offer support, offer supplies, offer anything. And it's pretty sad because we've been doing it for almost a year now. And it's every Saturday at 3 at MLK Park. So it would be nice if you guys came out, dropped off supplies, dropped off food, dropped off anything that could be needed to help feed those in need or give supplies to those in need. This is coming out of our own pockets or we ask for donations. So it'd be nice to see all of y'all that sits on this commission board to come out, support, and help and give back like we do to the people of Kalamazoo that are in need.
Good evening. My name is Diana Morton Thompson, and I live in the Oakwood Drive, Winchell neighborhood. I'm calling in this evening to give my personal opinion regarding the resolution related to the return to in-person meetings, and to voice my support for this resolution, specifically because of the amendment permitting public comments to be made either in person or by electronic means. If we think about it, it's really only logical that in addition to in-person meetings, we continue to use the investment we've already made in electronic communication technology, a technology that has been successfully used in numerous city meetings over the last many months. Moving forward, the routine use of both in-person and electronic communication is essential. This is because allowing the public to give input via telephone call line is, well, first, it's respectful of everyone's time, particularly in the public comments arena, as people tend to be more succinct and focused over the phone. And we all know the inherent delays that occur as well-intended residents wanting to speak are forced to push through a crowded room to line up against a wall and stand waiting for protracted periods of time. But more importantly, allowing the public to routinely give input via a telephone call-in line is more equitable, particularly for those with children, mobility or health constraints, transportation issues, or inflexible work schedules that simply make it impossible for them to attend an in-person meeting. Those important voices in our community can now be heard. And I truly mean heard. It is one thing to read a written statement, but sometimes you, as our commissioners, just need to hear your constituents' words, hear our voices, and the voices that have been inadvertently sidelined for too long. I thank the City Commission and city staff who have worked so diligently through the challenges of the last year and have wisely instituted changes using modern electronic communications technology. So vote to approve the resolution and let us all step firmly into the future that is better for everyone. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, that was the last public comment.
Thank you, Deputy City Manager Chamberlain, and I want to sincerely thank everyone who took the time and made the effort to get in touch with us tonight. I know sometimes it can be a little confusing about what portion of the agenda you're responding to, but the effort is worth it, and I appreciate that input. Next is the consent agenda. City Manager Ritzma.
We have 11 items this evening presented for approval. First is a approval of a sole source purchase with Dean Boiler Incorporated for retubing one of the 3 hot water boilers for the downtown snowmelt system in the amount of $176,100. Next is the approval of a contract with Peters Construction Company for sidewalk improvement project number 2 in the amount of $709,232.11. Next is the approval of a professional service agreement for traffic technical services with Traffic Technical Services LLC at the rate of $48 per hour, not to exceed $50,000 for a period of 24 months. Traffic Technical Services LLC is owned and operated by a City of Kalamazoo retiree, Brian Burlingham. Next is the approval of a 1-year contract extension with GHD for environmental consulting services at the Cork Street landfill in the amount of $182,775. Next is the approval of a contract with CHOP for 2021 neighborhood tree maintenance in the amount of $115,270. Next is the first reading of an ordinance permitting the use of consumer fireworks in commemoration of the Juneteenth National Independence Holiday. Next is the first reading of an ordinance amending the Kalamazoo City Code to clarify the operation of off-road vehicles and all-terrain vehicles on public streets. Next is the adoption of a resolution approving the revised Second Amendment to the Act 381 Brownfield Plan for scattered site infill housing in Kalamazoo. Next is the adoption of a resolution approving the sale of 510 Phelps Avenue to Shara Berry for $1,000. Next, the approval of a memorandum of understanding between the Kalamazoo County Treasurer and the City of Kalamazoo regarding an owner-occupied tax foreclosure prevention assistance partnership. And finally, approval of a request from the Kalamazoo Growlers to publicly display fireworks at Homer Stryker Field on July 17, 2021.
Thank you, Manager Ritzma. Commissioners, the requested action is to approve items 1 through 11 and authorize the city manager to sign all documents on behalf of the city. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Commissioner Cunningham.
Support.
Supported by Commissioner Pradel. Clerk Moss, please call the roll.
Commissioner Urban,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Griffin,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham,
Yes.
Commissioner Hess,
Yes.
Commissioner Knott,
Yes.
Commissioner Pradel.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. The consent agenda items are approved. Next is reports and legislation. City Manager Ritzma, do you have a report?
Yeah, I would like to call on our Director of Public Services, James Baker. We know over the last couple of weeks, we've been blessed with some much needed rain, but in some cases it came too quickly, too much. And so I just want Director Baker to talk about our flood mitigation efforts. And we also know what happened in the Detroit area with I-94 and some of the drainage issues there. So just to explain a little bit how our system is different in that regard. So Director Baker.
Thank you. Welcome, Director Baker.
Thank you, Your Honor, City Manager Ritzma, City Commission, and I'm Director Baker for those listening. And I just want to take a moment to kind of explain some of the storm event features and some of the differences or nuances between various communities and stormwater systems and how they may be at risk or be affected. When we looked at the rainfall that occurred at the end of 2 weeks ago and kind of into last week, Kalamazoo received 4.5 inches of rain over a 3-day period. That rainfall was received during 8 separate independent thunderstorms. So we really had just a series of thunderstorms that occurred over a 3-day period. Some communities on the east side of the state saw as much as 8 inches of rainfall within one 24-hour period. So although we're all in Michigan, the way the thunderstorms hit us had, some differences in the intensity or the amount of rainfall as it was coming down. One of the characteristics of Kalamazoo that's typical of smaller communities and sets us apart from some of the bigger southeastern Michigan communities is that we have what's called a separate sewer system. That being said, is our storm sewers in the streets are in separate pipes from our sanitary sewer. Now, in combined sewer systems, which are typical in much larger communities, the raw sewage and the stormwater are combined, if you will, in the same pipe network. And so what happens in some of these larger communities when they are overwhelmed with rainfall events that are intense, that are beyond the design of the system, is that you'll have surcharging events that occur that would affect both, on the street, flooding and ponding of streets. And then you would also have sewage backing up into homes. And those events would be occurring simultaneously because that is one pipe that both the raw sewage and the rainwater being collected in. Now in Kalamazoo, we're a separate system. Our streets are not taking the same water and conveying it to the same place that our raw sewage is going. And there's still risk in Kalamazoo. Certainly, our sanitary sewer pipes are buried underground, and when you have pipe networks buried underground and it's raining outside and the water tables are going up, there's cracks in the pipes and things can happen. We do have 2 programs in place in Kalamazoo that really focus on preventing what we call sanitary sewer overflows and sanitary sewer backups. A sanitary sewer overflow is an event where sewage is released out under the ground. A sanitary sewer backup is where sewage backs up into a home or property. We have an annual pipelining program that we have in place. At every year we are outlining pipe, and what that is we're inserting a cast in place pipeliner inside the existing pipes to seal up all the joints and seal up all the cracks. We also have clean outs that we put in at the property line. And what a clean out does is allows us to address issues such as root intrusion or defects with the service lateral that's connected to the home. Gives us an ability to inspect and verify if there's a plug on the property owner side or if there's a plug in the main, and gives both us and plumbers access to that line to be able to clean it out. Within that program, we also have backflow prevention devices, which we can install in the right of way if there's room, or we can make property owners aware of that. And so we have protections in place within the sanitary sewer system to try to prevent those sanitary sewer backups from occurring. We also have just launched this year a smart sewer system where we're replacing our conventional iron manhole covers with a fiberglass composite manhole cover It's got sensors inside of it, both level sensors and odor sensors that we've got them throughout the system, so that as those levels in the sewer start to rise, we're tracking and trending that and receiving alarms and notifications here in the control center. And we can track storm events, and we can track and respond to situations. Another issue that you saw with some of the state highways and some of the connected roadways in the communities at the southeastern portion of the state are what we call depressed freeways. This is where a freeway system drops down to go under a bridge or something like that. Those systems often require pumping to keep stormwater moving. And during intense events, the pumps can be overwhelmed. And in areas where you have a series of depressed freeways, oftentimes you have cascading failures where one of those will fail, and then it's kind of a domino effect of failures that occur. Additionally, if those systems fail and then are flooded, those pumps are often knocked out, require maintenance or replacement to get those going. Now, we have one example of those in Kalamazoo. That's our viaduct. Oftentimes, we may get intense rainfalls that might pond up a little bit, but the pumps will usually catch up. Those pumps are pretty new. Were replaced recently by MDOT not too long ago. Although the main limitation that we have with the viaduct is that when the Kalamazoo River stage exceeds 10.5 feet, we've got to shut that down. And the reason for that is the river actually starts flowing back in to that roadway system. Understanding that Kalamazoo is not without risk, we do have capacity limitations, but there are some things that do set us apart. We need to continue to look for sustainable funding within our stormwater system. We need to enact and complete deficiency studies to let us know where improvements are needed. And we need to continue to look for funding to provide for green infrastructure. To talk about some of the projects that we've been working on just recently, we've got our stormwater performance standards that live within the ordinance. You heard staff from the planning department talk about requirements for green space and such like that. We have what's called a net zero requirement for infill development, so that new builds or new development coming into the city, they're not allowed to discharge more stormwater than what the site would previously discharge on itself. So those facilities that are paving parking lots, creating more impervious space, they have to retain that water that's generated on site, and we have criteria under which they have to follow that. We're also looking at increasing our storage and buffering capacity with the Allied landfill project that's occurring in between Cork and Alcott Streets. We've worked with EPA within that project to create 7 acres of additional wetland that has not previously existed in Kalamazoo. And what that will help us is during storm events, that provides some attenuation of the Portage Creek. When the creek gets into kind of what we would consider a high flow status, we would be diverting water into that newly constructed wetland. We're also working with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Office currently on a grant opportunity to construct green space and additional wetland attenuation in a small piece of brownfield property that the city owns between Reed and Stockbridge Avenue. Continuing kind of a concept of resiliency in design, we're always looking at matching our designs for, where the water's headed in terms of where these additional flows are going. From a design standpoint, we're seeing annual increases in runoff and annual increases in peak flow from our hydrographs. So when we're enacting projects and looking at culvert replacements and things of that nature, we just completed Cork last year. So we changed our design of that culvert based on the engineering information that we're getting in terms of peak runoff increases and things of that nature. We're in the design iterations for some culvert replacements on Angling Road, and we're currently doing a project on Sun Valley where we're actually putting a piece of property into a conservation easement with Eagle. So as we're doing this work, as we're doing these designs, we're looking at what is changing in terms of runoff, what is changing in terms of system design, and we're always trying to work to improve the infrastructure and be respondent to the changes in climate. I can take any questions. I've kind of given a touch on a lot of different areas. If there's something that any commissioner would like to hear more on or any specific questions, I'd be happy to go into it.
I just going to ask something quickly before we open it up, Director Baker. First of all, thank you very much for your detailed report and your foresight and thoughtfulness. Much appreciated. I know the commission supports that. Would you, for individuals who are looking for some help as far as the backflow and backups in people's homes, how would they start the process of seeing whether they can access something like that?
Yes, thank you very much, Your Honor. That's a great question. Any one of those items that I talked about, either a backflow preventer, clean out, or any issue that you have with your sanitary sewer service, these are programs that we offer both for in-city residents and for our service area that covers the township and communities that we provide retail service to. So if you're a city customer and you live inside the city, give us a call at 311 and reference, either a sanitary sewer cleanout or a backflow preventer. If you live in the township or one of our partner communities that we offer service to, and you live outside of the city, give us a call at 337-8000. And again, ask for a sanitary sewer cleanout or backflow preventer or something along the lines of dealing with sanitary sewer, and we'll create a work order. Staff will come out to the home and perform a camera inspection of the line and then determine next steps on installing cleanouts.
Thank you very much, Director Baker. Questions for Director Baker? Looks like you covered that. So appreciate your presentation very much. Anything else? Yes, thank you. Thanks for being here. Anything else, Manager Ritzma?
No, Your Honor.
All right, next is unfinished business, and we don't often have unfinished business, but we put aside an item to a date certain, tabled it from our last meeting. And Manager Ritzma, then this is item G1. Would you read that, please?
Sure. Item J1 is approval of a memorandum of agreement with Kalamazoo Public Schools for the Kalamazoo Department of Public Safety to provide school resource officer services for the 2021-2022 school year.
Thank you, Manager Ritzma. So just as a reminder here, this is an opportunity for more questions from commission. There was a discussion at a previous meeting. There were questions that were raised at that meeting. At our committee of the whole meeting, just in advance of this meeting, there was an opportunity for another extended discussion, and our partners, the superintendent and the director of safety at Kalamazoo Public Schools, also presented. In addition, there with our agenda, I'm not sure if it's on this agenda, but for sure the committee of the whole agenda, which you can find online, was a 30-slide deck that kind of explained the process and the thinking from KDPS. But all that said, are there questions for staff from commission at this time? Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Anderson. So I just wanted to have a comment and then a question. And so as it's already been lifted up, our decision is just as it relates to KDPS serving in this position with Norris. And so, some people feel safer with law enforcement, others do not. And so I guess for me, I'm most concerned with the information that we are collecting as the city of Kalamazoo and how, SROs have been in place for this long and there's never been any data collected from the city's perspective. And Chief Coakley, it falls in your lap now, but it's just something that you've inherited. And so how And I also agree that, you can't do the same thing and expect different results. Are SROs the very best possibility? That's to be determined. But what's in front of us right now is how we can make sure that KDPS and the ways that they're interacting are the best for our community. And so I'm want to just get back to that requirement that I'm asking for about an annual report. The who, what, where's, and when's, not about the students, but about the officers themselves, as well as having this information being placed on the KDPS transparency page for the future. And so if I can, maybe there can be some discussion, and I don't know, Chief, if you have a chance to think about that, but just what specifics we're looking for. If anybody else is looking for anything, I know I am. And so I just want to hear your thoughts and ideas on that, if you do have any.
Thank you, Vice Mayor, for that question. And good evening, Commission, Mayor, and again, Vice Mayor. That vote for a conversation, Vice Mayor, in particular, because what the SRO, his or her job would be, of course, to be having a presence in particular, Lloyd Norris High School. His or her job is several things, including, as we've talked about mentorship, we've talked about building bridges, we've talked about informational. We've just run just a few things over the several weeks that we've talked about this particular position and what the SRO, his or her particular position. As a last resort is enforcement, and that enforcement comes along with the collaboration of school officials, in particular the Chief of Public Safety, Donald Webster, in particular and specifically the principal of Lloyd Norris High School and the administration. So what data is collected, any and all, let's go specifically talk about arrests, that is data that is collected. Anytime any officer in the city of Kalamazoo makes an arrest, that data is collected. So everything else on that side, on the other side of the ledger, if I may say, is not data that is particularly collected, but the SRO does have a daily activity report, and what his or her job, or his or her opportunities were on that day or that week. Collectively, that aggregate data is collected and held at public safety to exactly what he or she has done. There is what I would say is a meeting for another date to talk about that and how that's collected and placed on, because that's easily done, to put on the transparency page. So I look forward to that, and moving forward, the information surely can be put out because it is collected. It's just that the heavy, if I may use the vernacular, the heavy lifting of that is more of a mentorship conversational piece versus the other on the enforcement side.
Thank you, Chief. And I definitely agree that I wasn't intending to come up with all of the data points tonight, but in the future, absolutely have that conversation. And I just have one last comment. It was mentioned at the committee of the whole, just how SROs or how this may or may not relate to the school to prison pipeline. But I just wanted to clarify, there are many, components that play into the school to prison pipeline, but the issue that I brought up in relationship to KDPS has to do with the sharing of information that's separate from SROs. That goes into, for example, when you're building juvenile detention centers, where are you getting the information from to know how big or how small to build that center? So it was just in relationship to that. So I just wanted to clarify that. But thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Chief. Other questions? So I don't see any questions for staff at this time. Seeing none, then the recommended action is a motion to approve the memorandum of agreement and authorize the city manager to sign all related documents. Is there a motion? Motion made by Commissioner Hess, supported by Commissioner Urban. Is there more discussion, Commission? Seeing none, Clerk Moss, will you please call the roll?
Vice Mayor Griffin,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham,
Yes.
Commissioner Hess,
Yes.
Commissioner Knott,
Yes.
Commissioner Pradel,
Yes.
Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. The motion passes. Next is new business. It's item L1, City Manager Risma.
Sure. Under policy items, K1 is adoption of a resolution amending various actions taken in the past year to return to in-person meetings by the City Commission and other boards and commissions of the city, which are subject to the Open Meetings Act.
And Manager Risma, is there a staff report on this item?
Yeah, I'd like to have a couple folks weigh in here with what we're bringing tonight to the commission. First, we have, at the last meeting, I announced the plan to go back to in-person meetings on the 19th of July. And in preparation of that, we've had a team in the city here, my office, city attorney's office, and the clerk's office come together with what would be recommendations for coming back to in person. As was noted in the public comment, we have allowed or will allow for a hybrid, I believe all the way up to the end of the year. And so I know there's a lot of concern about, the virus is still out there active and concerned with variants and all of that. So we try to create a flexible enough recommendation and policy here that will recognize that, but also allow us to get back to in-person meetings. So I would ask that Deputy City Manager Jeff Chamberlain just kind of walk us through the recommendations, please.
All right. Thank you very much, City Manager Ritzma. Good evening, everybody. Again, this is Jeff Chamberlain, Deputy City Manager. And as we've been looking at how to go back to in-person meetings, it became very clear that doing completely Zoom type meetings like we're doing right now is actually fairly easy overall. If we're at a completely 100% in person, that's like the way we used to before COVID. That's very doable. But if we want to go somewhere kind of hybrid, there's a lot of different ways to do that. And so we've been looking at what would be the best way here for Kalamazoo, given the circumstances that we find ourselves in. And we are talking primarily about the City Commission tonight, but we are also keeping in mind that we have about 30 public boards and commissions that meet weekly throughout the week. We have multiple boards and commissions going on, and those too are public meetings also. And so we're looking at how the public can participate and what's the best way to run those. And so as the city manager mentioned, we are looking at recommending to you all a hybrid type situation. And that in the short answer would be to allow in-person meetings with the commission and the public, but would also still allow people to call in comments, and that we would then stream the meetings also. Our guidance on all this has been primarily the state orders. That is what we've been using, and we recognize that the state orders have been changing over time. As the science changes, and as quite frankly as the vaccines have come out, we've all experienced that the state orders have changed. So we, as the city staff, have been looking to the state orders to kind of give us that guidance as to what do we do on a day-to-day basis. And just kind of as a reminder too, you know, we are in person and have been throughout this entire pandemic from a staffing standpoint for many of our staff working public safety, public services that have been out. But the question about how we interact with the public is really the message of what we want to talk about tonight. We have, you know, obviously been looking at what other communities have been doing. We've obviously been doing research through the National League of Cities, the International City County Management Association, a number of webinars with the Michigan Municipal League. There's a group of Michigan city managers called the Michigan Managers, MME, Michigan Municipal Executives, I'm sorry. And then even just here locally, we stay in contact with our surrounding peers to stay in touch with what's going on. And we recognize that different communities are doing things differently. And so even across the country too, where you have different states that have different requirements. So kind of putting all that mixed together and what it is that we're trying to do and how we can do that with the other boards and commissions also came to that recommendations that we sent to the commissioners late last week, just so that you'd have a chance to take a look at it before we talk tonight. But again, just to kind of reiterate, the idea for the in-person meetings with the city commission would be to go back to having them in person. Idea for the in-person meetings. I'm getting a little bit of feedback. Okay, sorry about that. That we would return to in-person meetings at the city commission chambers. We would follow the state guidelines as far as asking people that if they are vaccinated, they would not have to wear a mask. If they are not vaccinated, they would require a mask. We are not at this time recommending the 6-foot separation because the state is no longer requiring that for the city commission chambers. We would still be streaming the meetings live on Public Media Network, Facebook, and YouTube for the city commission. We would obviously have hand sanitizers, masks, and things like that available at all the entrances coming into it. We would still allow, well, let me back up. We would also allow in-person public comment. So if people wanted to come in person and make a comment, they would do that. And we would also allow the phone-in public comment, like what we have right now. Now, we are looking at a new, slightly different way of doing the phone-in public comment. And that would be, instead of people calling in and leaving a message, that they would call in basically live during that public comment period. And that they would have a number to call in. And we've discovered that most of the other cities are doing it that way and have been through the whole pandemic of you call in, and if you're at item E1 like we had tonight, we would put that person on the air, and we put the next one on the air. And then when we're finished with that, we would then close that line, and then people could start calling in for the next item. So we would just not be using the recorded comments for that. I know we've had some questions that have been raised specifically about the city commission chambers and have we switched out the air filters and installed new technology? And the answer is we have not here in City Hall. The approach that we have taken so far as an administration is we've been installing those new types of technologies as we're doing remodeling in buildings. And so, for example, we are currently remodeling the air handling system at our Stockbridge facility, and a new ionization filter system is going into that building. We are looking at getting quotes for the city commission chambers as well as the rest of City Hall for that same system. But we did not have that scheduled to have that in place here this month. Just a couple other things too. Again, as we know, we talk about boards and commissions in addition to the city commission. Our recommendation would be for them to start planning to go back to being in person in August, because we know a number of them are scheduling meetings right now during the month of July, to give those boards time to then prep to have in-person meetings in August. Just as a reminder, we have boards and commission meetings that meet throughout the city, not just here at City Hall, so in various locations. And Currently, the city commission chambers is the only room that has the technology to do live streaming of meetings with the appropriate cameras, microphones, et cetera. So we are also getting quotes to do technology upgrades to the community room. So that would allow us to do the same type of broadcasting live meetings for more boards and commissions than what we had done pre-COVID. So what we are looking at is possibly some of our bigger boards and commissions. I mean, bigger as in they handle the types of issues that get more community feedback, so that we would be able to continue streaming live on a handful of boards and commissions, and also do the call-in. There'd probably be some boards that we would be recommending that they just go back to being in live. That they're, again, these are the boards that perhaps don't get as much public comment, but yet they're still required to have a public meeting. And so those boards would just go back to being in-person live meetings like they had previous to COVID. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. And I know this is kind of the second half of kind of this conversation is City Attorney Robinson has prepared an actual change to your rules for the resolutions that would effectuate, at least for the city commission meetings, you're going back to in-person as well as the boards and commissions. So I will be happy to pause here and see if there's any questions.
Thank you, Deputy City Manager Chamberlain. Just a quick question here. How does this relate to board member or commission attendance at meetings? If you want to talk about that just a little bit.
Right. With the in-person meetings, we would be promoting that the board members attend in person. How they can attend virtually, I'm going to let that answer be a little bit more for Attorney Robinson, because there are some state laws that regulate what board members can and cannot do virtually. So it does pose an interesting situation if we have, for example, the city commission, and some of you are in the room and some of you would not want to call in or have a different technology to participate. One, we have the question of, can you do it? And Attorney Robinson has an answer on that. But again, if for these types of boards like the City Commission or a few of the other boards that we're live streaming it, we would set the technology up to allow that, assuming it's still allowed.
Thank you, DCM Chamberlain. So Attorney Robinson, do you have something to add to the presentation?
Yes, Mayor, I do. Clyde Robinson, City Attorney. I guess I don't want to necessarily plow the same ground, but I want to, in order to understand where we're at today, it would help maybe to give us a short perspective of where we were and where the journey we've taken thus far. It all goes back to March of 2020, when the governor of this state and other states started shutting down various public venues. And at that point, the commission enacted a set of rules to govern the fact that we were really going to go remote electronic meetings. And there was a little bit of at that point, the Open Meetings Act wasn't really meshing well, but we were able to prevail under the governor's executive orders to move forward. Subsequently, those executive orders were declared unconstitutional for some period of time. They were okay for a short period of time, but after a while, the court ruled, Michigan Supreme Court ruled they couldn't be effective. Well, that threw the whole open meetings issue back into the lap of the legislature, and there was new legislation adopted. And then the commission in October of 2020 adopted a new set of rules that again reflected the change in the legislation. And that is important because going forward, here's what the Open Meetings Act says. And again, I want to give you some perspective of where we have been for many, 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 many years since the act was enacted in 1976. The legislation was silent as to whether you could do remote meetings. There's only really two sources of law that talk about remote meetings. One was an attorney general's opinion, which is not binding authority, but this was a group of intermediate school districts in the Upper Peninsula that got together to meet. I think they met quarterly, and given the travel times, given the weather, particularly in the winter months, they met through video or phone conference. And there was a challenge as to, well, you can't do that. That violates the Open Meetings Act. The Attorney General ruled that in that case, that it was permissible. The other case is more a case in which there was a Department of Social Services hearing in which the participants participated by video conference and telephone conference, and that was challenged. And that actually went to the courts. And again, there was, the court didn't say yes or no, but they said the Department of Social Services didn't put in a rule to permit it. Therefore, I guess the assumption was, well, if you create a rule to permit it, it's going to be okay. So that's where the legal landscape existed until recently. When I say recently, I'm not talking about 2020 or 2021. There was a movement. I think it was like in 2016. There had been legislation proposed in every session that said local officials, in order for you to participate and vote, you have to be physically present. But none of that passed. What did get passed was that a provision that if you are in military service and you get called away, you can participate remotely. So the legislature recognized this narrow exception. It still left it an open question as to whether or not, if you weren't on military service, you could still participate by remotely. I came to the conclusion that yes, you could. And that answer has now been given to us by the legislature because as based upon the rules that they have passed and that we are acted upon in October of last year, there were 3 conditions in which a public official that sits on a public board could participate remotely. First was a declaration of state or local emergency. And we've been operating under that since March of this year. Secondly is the military service. And the lastly is medical condition. Again, a response to the COVID-19. The 2 exceptions, that is the local emergency and medical condition, expire at the end of this year. December 31st, the legislation that permits you to, a public official, a member of a public board, to participate remotely goes away. And so after January 1st of 2022, the only way an individual can participate remotely is due to being involved in military service. So that's the landscape that we're working under. So over as I said, the past year and a half or so, the City Commission has adopted rules, and what is before you is it encapsulates the rules that exist pursuant to the Open Meetings Act. They reflect the ability, as DCM Chamberlain indicated, the ability to participate by public comment remotely, and limits the ability of commissioners to participate remotely to basically, at this point, if the state of emergency goes away, you have to have a medical condition or you are on active military service. Now, the military, the medical condition language is rather vague. And so I've come to the conclusion that I would interpret that if there are circumstances in a public official's immediate household that for safety sakes would preclude them from participating publicly, that it would be better and safer for them and their families or other people who live with them to participate remotely. That I think is within the spirit of the statute. But again, that exception sunsets at the end of this year. And the other, so basically to kind of give you, that's where we're at. So the resolution before you does basically 3 things. Number 1, it rescinds the declaration of state of emergency, which was due to expire at the end of August anyway. It just accelerates that for the City Commission by about 45 days, and for all other city affiliated boards, the 1st of August. The other thing that it does is one of the things that the city commission did in January of this year was adopt the committee of the whole. That experiment, if you will, or that temporary rule is due to expire at the end of this month. And the resolution extends that rule toward the end of through the end of the year. It also amends the schedule of meetings to permit the committee of the whole to continue to meet on the first and third Monday of the month at 5 o'clock, with 2 exceptions, or perhaps 3, depending on how you count them. Number one, since Labor Day is the first Monday in September, it moves it to the following day, just like with the regular commission meeting. So that would be that the committee of the whole would meet at 5 o'clock on the Tuesday following Labor Day. The second is, again, first and third, the first Monday in November. There is no city commission meeting. That was part of this calendar you adopted at the end of last year. So there is no committee of the whole meeting on that first Monday. And because the November 8th is the organizational meeting under the charter, I guess I made the decision that there would be no committee of the whole meeting either on that evening as well, since it's the organizational meeting has to take place first to swear in new commission members. It didn't make any sense to have commissioners whose term is, if you will, ended for all practical purposes to come together at 5 o'clock for a committee of the whole meeting, only to have the new commission sworn in a half hour later. So the exceptions are moving the committee of the whole to the day after Labor Day, and no committee of the whole meetings on November 1st or November 8th. Then the final thing is changing the rules governing basically public participation and also commission attendance. There's, as again, DCM Chamberlain pointed out, there are 3 models. In general, there's the old way we used to do things where everything was done face to face. The new one that we've been operating under for the last year and a half, in which everybody's meeting remotely, and then there's something in the middle. And the idea here is, as outlined by Mr. Chamberlain, is to permit public comment remotely. And that's really what the rules do. It recognizes that ability to do a remote participation by the public. And if there's a medical condition or military service, permits commissioners to participate remotely. So that's it in a nutshell. I would also point out, and I don't think you have to make a formal motion, but in going through this, probably for about the 5th time, I discovered a couple of typographical errors. I just want to call them to your attention, and I would ask for the clerk to make note of these, what I'll call Scrivener errors. On the first page, in the second paragraph, it's the last line. We talk about the emergency the approval by the FDA of vaccines to prevent the spread of COVID-19. And it goes, therefore, providing a path to the word that's in the resolution says, and I was using voice recognition. It should have said to end the pandemic rather than and. And the other typographical error is on page 2 of paragraph 2B. That's the second line. It talked about the committee of the whole meetings will be held on the 1st and 3rd. The word third should be there rather than the abbreviation 3RD. So with those Scrivener changes, I don't think you may need to make a formal motion to make those changes. I just ask that the clerk recognize them, so when the resolution is reproduced, those corrections are made. Then that ends my presentation. If you have any further questions, I'm open to answering them for your satisfaction in considering this resolution.
Thank you, Attorney Robinson. So, commissioners, here we go. Commissioners, do you have questions for staff at this time? Commissioner Knott.
I have a question. I'll save my comments for later, but could somebody clarify? So public participation, we had a woman call in previously who talked about supporting this endeavor because it still allows for remote public participation. But based on her comments, I think that she was led to believe that she could record it, like at the beginning of the meeting or whenever, if she had, childcare issues, et cetera. But what I'm hearing now is that is not true. It would have to be live, remote public participation. Is that correct?
Yes, that's what we're looking at, is having people call in live during that particular public comment section of the meeting.
Other questions, Commissioner Knott, at this point? No? Commissioner Urban?
Yes. Well, if we have live telephone input, do we run the risk of going back to having F-bombs occurring since the voice is immediately broadcast? There's no screening and ordering of messages. I'm just want to hear how the city and its attorney plans to address that possibility.
Commissioner Urban, that's a good question. This is Deputy City Manager Jeff Chamberlain. Whenever you have live call-in, yes, that is a possibility. Again, most of the communities that we looked at are doing the live call-in right now. I think so many communities are using it. It's become somewhat normalized. One of the other factors is that type of process requires less staff to do that. You can basically do it with one staff, and that way we can also use that with the boards and commissions and build this into a more normalized ongoing process, as opposed to having multiple IT staff and other staff behind the screens that are doing that for every meeting. So that was part of our rationale also, sir.
Okay, well then that leads me to just say to everybody in the audience and anybody who's listening that if you want to save taxpayer dollars, behave yourself when you talk to the public through this medium. Then we don't have to spend extra money.
And if I may, Commissioner Urban, again, Clyde Robinson, City Attorney, in response to your question, there's a couple of things. Number one, I think that the Zoom bombing nonsense has kind of become passé, as I think just reflected by the comments of Commissioner Chamberlain. I guess I'm not too worried about that issue. The other issue is, and here's where it gets tricky in terms of closing somebody down. When you're in the chambers and somebody becomes profane, we can cut the speaker, if you will. We can close off the microphone. Individuals in the chamber can still hear, but it's not likely to be broadcast. So that exists for an in live. In terms of cutting somebody off on the phone, because we're the government, you start to run into the whole First Amendment issue in terms of cutting people off. And as was reflected by the recent Supreme Court decision regarding the profane cheerleader case, there's a great deal of, there's the sentiment that one person's profanity is another person's lyric. And there's an argument to be made that mere profanity is not necessarily disruptive of a meeting. And under the Open Meetings Act, the only reason you can ask a person to leave a meeting is if they actually disrupt the meeting. And profane language in and of itself isn't, the courts have said is not a reason for throwing somebody out of a meeting. So I want you to have that legal background as well as you consider this. So if it becomes a problem, I would point out that there is no law that requires you to have remote comments. You could say, we're just going to go back to the way it used to be.
Thanks for the clarification.
Other questions for staff? Vice Mayor Griffin.
Thank you, Mayor Anderson. And I have a couple comments, but I'll save those for later. But I do have a question. Has anyone gotten any estimates for costs? Because I heard you all say that you were looking to do this hybrid through December. But what will it take for this to be a more permanent solution?
Sure.
In terms of what we need for technology.
The the recommendation that we're working on with presenting here to you tonight is making this more permanent. So this hybrid idea of having us to continue broadcasting your meetings on not only public media network, but also broadcasting them on Facebook and YouTube. The idea is that that would continue on. And then also that with the call-in comments, that would continue on. There's very nominal costs to that, Vice Mayor. So the cost for that is not an issue. Again, upgrading the community room so that we have the appropriate microphones and cameras, so that, for example, if the Foundation for Excellence or Shared Prosperity Kalamazoo wanted to have a live meeting that was streamed also. But again, we think those costs are relatively nominal in the long run for those types of technologies.
And again, Clyde Robinson, City Attorney, just to clarify, the only things that in this resolution that end at the end of the year are the ability for the medical condition exception to remote in for a public official, and the committee of the whole rule that expires at the close of the year. However, I anticipate that before the end of the year, the committee of the whole rule will be probably made permanent by the city commission. The other one, in regard to the medical condition, that's as I indicated earlier, that's a question of the Open Meetings Act, and that can't be extended by this board.
Vice Mayor, do you have another question?
No, just comments.
Okay. Other questions for staff? Commissioner Pradel.
Sure. Sorry, I have a bit of a list, so please bear with me here, but hopefully this will cover some things. I remember somebody mentioning before that Kalamazoo County and Portage were trying to coincide with our coming back to in person. So is this, you mentioned that this might be kind of a coordinated effort, so all the local municipalities are on the same page. Do you know if that's still happening with the other local units of government?
Yes, Commissioner Prado, this is Jim Ritzman, City Manager. I have been in contact with both Portage, the county, and Kalamazoo Township. And in fact, the county's meeting tonight, I think they're talking about going back to in person and what that looks like. And Portage, I believe, is already doing that. And so our recommendation here is consistent with what they're doing.
Okay. Yeah, that leads to kind of another question that I wonder if it would be possible to kind of get a report back, even if it's just brief, about what changes those other municipalities are recommending or making. Just because, maybe there's some other idea someone else came up with, or something that we could share with them, or we could learn from them. The other one was, if we were to mandate things like mask wearing or social distancing or room capacity limits, is there any possibility that somebody could challenge us in court for those efforts to claim, inaccessibility or whatever? Or do we have a right to claim the need to initiate some of those things?
Clyde Robinson, City Attorney. For $200, you can file a lawsuit anytime. So I hate to be flip, but the fact of the matter is, this is an issue in today's world in terms of people being forced to do something they feel they shouldn't have to do, particularly to attend a public meeting. So if we said, whether you're vaccinated or not, you have to wear a face mask. Again, as a government, we probably don't have as much freedom as an individual who has a private business. I happened to go to Bronson Hospital yesterday for a doctor's appointment. That's where the doctor's office is. And they said, everybody's got to wear a mask. And whether you're vaccinated or not, everybody wears a mask. And everybody did. And so that's one situation. But in a public meeting, given the fact that the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services has basically said there is no gathering, there is no face mask requirements anymore. The Michigan Occupational Health and Safety Administration has said they've changed their rules in terms of mask wearing and really only limited to the healthcare circumstance. That we could be challenged by somebody who says, wait a minute, city, why are you requiring me to wear a mask when I come to visit and want to participate in a public meeting? Where's your legal authority to do that?
Another
So
question.
yes,
Okay.
and I can't tell you whether we'd win or lose in that situation.
But we as a commission body could try it at the very least, to try to implement those.
You could try it.
Okay. The other thing I wanted to ask, and this is maybe more of a question for Jim or for Jeff, but should there be any member of senior staff who typically needs to report or be present at a city commission meeting? Is there protocol in place, or at least can the administration give us some reassurance that if somebody has some health condition or health concern, that they can find some alternative means to still participate and provide their professional expertise at meetings?
Yes, Commissioner, we would certainly accommodate that through the hybrid model that we're talking about this evening.
Okay. And then the other thing I was going to ask as well is, if there were to be a commissioner that would opt to be virtual based on health needs. So maybe it's, you mentioned it could be their family as well that has health concerns. How can they do so without infringing on their health privacy rights and still, get permission to do that?
Well, I can answer that one, Commissioner. Again, City Attorney Clyde Robinson. We're taking everybody on their word to whether or not they're vaccinated. We're city's not asking anybody to show up with their vaccination card in order to come into the building. And we have to take a public officials at their word that they're being honest, that there's a medical condition. I think that's all they have to say, and they're choosing to use the exemption that exists under the Open Meetings Act. And because you're right, public officials, just because you are either elected or appointed to a board, you don't forfeit your rights under the Health Protection and Privacy Acts.
Sorry, I have two more questions, and that's it, I promise. So the next one is, in terms of us on the dais, has anybody had a chance to just kind of check out to see if we were to opt to wear masks, is it permissible for us to wear a mask on the dais? And B, does our sound system work with people wearing masks on the dais?
Commissioner Praedel, this is Jeff Chamberlain. It should. I mean, just in that, when we're talking in public with somebody who's wearing a mask, we can hear them talk. So there might be a situation where maybe the speaker might need to lean in a little bit closer to the microphone. But as long as we could hear the person talking, it should be fine.
And then this is just like the last question, and I don't necessarily know if it can elicit a response here tonight, because I feel like it's pretty complicated, but I feel like this is the most important one I'll ask tonight. Is, if you remember back to February 2020, and we had the Drake Stadium car wash topic, right? And you had 400 people who came to City Hall. I still contend that one of the greatest risks that we run in terms of community participation and potentially having serious issues on our hand to mitigate is if we have another big hot topic issue and 400 people all converge onto City Hall. And we recognize the fact that it's not safe to have that many people at City Hall. And you have all those people converging on City Hall. And how do we make sure that we, A, keep everybody safe in that large of a condensed setting? But B, how do we make sure that every single person who walks in that door has an opportunity to make sure that their voice is heard in some capacity or another? I think it is absolutely imperative, because it's not a matter of when, or if, it's a matter of when that's going to happen again. And, potentially within the next 6 months to a year, when we could still have some health concerns. whether it be that, we have a team members who walk around with a tablet who record people, or whether it be we have recording devices that we can walk around with city staff to make sure that people are recorded so that people feel satisfied that they can walk away and know that their voice is going to be heard. I think that's a real concern that we still need to figure out. And I would encourage other municipalities to do the same, and especially with the number of boards that we have. I mean, the fact that the largest turnout of any meeting of our public meetings in 2020 before the pandemic was the Planning Commission. It wasn't even the City Commission meeting. That is something that I would really love for us to consider and think about and make sure that we're ready and equipped for.
Yeah, and if I could, Commissioner Fredo, again, this is Jeff Chamberlain, Deputy City Manager. That's an excellent point. In that we have thought about that with the community room being an overflow room as a possibility and we've done this before, where people can watch the meeting live on the screen in the community room. And then one by one come into the chambers to do their public comment. Because we do have even without COVID, there is obviously an occupancy limit to the chambers. When we were originally talking about under the state regulations of 6 foot separations for everybody, because if we're looking at 6 foot sideways and front and back, the public seating in that room dropped to about 15. And then, and obviously we did that once with the City Commission of having commissioners spread all the way on down to the floor level. So, I mean, those are the logistics, but I think the short answer is we want to abide by any occupancy limits that we have. And if we need to, we've had to look at overflow rooms that people can still participate in.
Yeah, and I think the challenge is that if I recall correctly from that February meeting, even with the overflow rooms, it wasn't sufficient. I mean, I remember there were people just like hanging out on the, basically in the lobby and the foyer areas of City Hall. And, I still have some concerns about that, because even the community room, I mean, that'll be something I want to comment on later, but, I really have some reservations about holding our COW meetings in the community room, because it is a very condensed small space. And again, if you have a larger turnout, it can get pretty dense in that room pretty fast. And so, my preference would be to be in, commission chambers, even for the COW meetings, if it's possible. But yeah, I mean, I've shared my piece, and, I think hopefully it's heard, but I that's one concern that I feel like still is somewhat unanswered, and, I think could become a potential issue of disenfranchising people's voices if we were to have a huge turnout. So I'll just leave it at that. Thank you. Appreciate everybody's patience with me.
I would offer this again, Clyde Robinson, City Attorney. I would only offer this observation in regard to particularly city commissioners who wish to speak with a mask. I think that I would urge you to drop the mask when you're speaking, so that individuals who are hearing impaired can see what you're saying, or the city would have to put in some type of other mechanism so that individuals can at least read what's being said. So I just caution that we do have some ADA responsibilities in that regard.
Manager Ritzma, were you going to say something?
Yeah, just in response, Jim Ritzma, City Manager, to Commissioner Prado's last comment about, planning for larger audiences. I do know other communities, and we certainly can do the same. Most of the time we know if there's going to be a large showing at a commission meeting. We can find an alternative site that accommodates more public. So, that could also be part of how we address, the larger audiences as well.
Thank you, Manager Ritzman. Other questions for staff? Okay, seeing no other questions for staff at this time. I guess I will just have a question. There's been some concerns raised. The next thing would be the motion to adopt a resolution, doing these variety of things, these three things that the the manager, the city attorney talked about. Are we feeling at this point like we're informed enough to go ahead and make a motion and have further discussion? Commissioner Knott.
I don't know if I'm informed enough or not. I think that this whole process was rushed. At our last meeting, it was announced that we would have recommendations, but it was also announced that there were going to be individual commissioner comments. For my colleagues that aren't aware, I sent a note to the mayor and to the city manager as it related to here are some things that are on my mind and that I'm concerned about, and I got a thanks, but I never had a conversation. I've had a couple of conversations with my colleagues, and from what I've heard, there weren't conversations amongst ourselves with leadership as well. So do I have enough information? Perhaps, but I think it's rushed, and I think that we can go above and beyond the state thresholds right now. We have other entities here in the city of Kalamazoo that are doing just that. We know that COVID is unpredictable and vaccination rates have completely stalled. There was reporting yesterday that said at our current rate, the state of Michigan won't be at the 70%, which is the minimum goal, until December 6th. So I'm not comfortable moving forward until we really take a deeper dive into, one, a true hybrid model that allows for public participation, and as well as looking at what legally we can do to not only protect the commission. There's a lot of emphasis on the commission, but as I heard Jeff talk about earlier, there are 30 other boards and commissions, let alone staff members, that don't have the choice to say, you know what, I'm going to resign because I don't feel comfortable showing up for a mandatory meeting that could go on, as Commissioner Pradel said, into the wee hours of the evening. I think we're all aware that the OIR report is coming, and I think that that will probably be the first opportunity for some big citizen input where we can anticipate being in the commission chambers for a substantial amount of time. I don't feel safe going back. I don't want to be the vaccination police. I don't want to be the mask police. And I think that we have opportunities to do more work and put forth a recommendation that takes our citywide families' safety into a better, sharper, focus.
Thank you, Commissioner Knott. Any other thoughts from commission? Yeah, Vice Mayor Griffin.
Thank you, Mayor Anderson. My thoughts aren't too different from what Commissioner Knott just lifted up. I think for me, COVID did a lot for us, but it also let us know that we are able to exist and function in ways that we previously had been conditioned and told that we couldn't. And that extends to our commission meetings. And I'm most concerned about us eliminating the ability for our community to participate in our meetings, whether that be because we've opened up and they don't feel safe showing up, or because they have families and lives and so on and so forth and can't be here. So I'm not comfortable with the picking and choosing of boards because if they're all public and open meetings, then they're all equally as important. And so I would, on top of what was already said, I would venture to say that all of the boards need to be available and accessible the same way they have been, the way we've been doing it the last year. I would say moving forward, we need to look at this hybrid option as a permanent solution. As we've seen, I don't want to repeat myself, but I believe in really providing accessibility and going to in-person and picking and choosing what boards are important or are important. I think that's a space that I don't necessarily want to be in. For example, the Brownfield board was not one of those boards that was listed. That board meets at 7:30 in the morning. They probably don't have anybody showing up in person at 7:30 in the morning. The ability to have that be, live streamed and people can participate that way will open that up and has opened that up. And I don't want to go backwards. So I just wanted to state that, and whatever we need to do to make it more accessible, that's what I'm leaning towards.
So, so from the chair's perspective here, and just trying to get a sense of, general conversation and concerns. And there's, we are masters of our own destiny on this. We're setting our rules. And so, an action we could take is we could table this for a subsequent meeting, and we could provide some specific input to staff of things we'd like, kinds of things we would like to have included in the plan. And, we could take an action on this, not unlike what we did with our memorandum of agreement with Kalamazoo Public Schools. So just suggesting that as an alternative, I guess. Commissioner Knott.
I would support the tabling. I have a lot of comments. I can hold those and have one-on-ones with staff. But I think that we're not ready for prime time tonight, and I don't want to make a decision that we regret.
Thank you, Commissioner Knott. Commissioner Urban?
Yeah. It seems to me that there's more public participation in the way we do it now than there would be if we went immediately back to in-person meetings. The thing is, the state isn't going to allow us to meet remotely in a few more weeks, and so we're going to have to deal with that, won't we?
Thank you, Commissioner Urban. Can we have clarification on that, Attorney Robinson?
Certainly. Well, the current law sunsets, the current amendments to the Open Meetings Act that permit remote participation sunset at the end of the year. And after that, the only way a member of a board subject to the Open Meetings Act can participate remotely is if they are on active military service.
Okay, so we have the rest of this year to fine tune this thing.
That's correct.
Okay, I thought it was going to be at the end of August that we had to do it by.
Well, the end of August is your own state of emergency that was declared back in March, and that ends August 31st.
Okay, so we'd have to extend our own state of emergency if we were to continue this way until the end of the year.
And again, while I appreciate, and I'm heard the same statistics that Commissioner Knott said, the question then becomes, is there an actual emergency? When the state has said, we're opening things up, there's no more restrictions on public gatherings, it seems a little inconsistent for the city of Kalamazoo to say, oh yeah, there's still an emergency, and without pointing to actual facts that would justify that determination. The resolution that was passed back in March declaring the emergency, we had some active statistics that supported that conclusion. Mm-hmm. As vaccination rates have climbed, although they have seemingly plateaued, much of that concern and the facts that was that upon which that emergency declaration was based no longer exist.
So, Attorney Robinson, are you suggesting that this should be resolved by the end of August or by the end of the year?
I think that in order to extend the state of emergency, the commission is going to be hard pressed to do that because the factual circumstances to support such a declaration don't exist.
So you're saying the end of August?
End of August.
All right.
You've already got that declaration, and I don't know that anybody's going to quibble with that, but you, by your own rule, said end of August is when the declaration of emergency ends. And we are going to back, the default is, as of the first meeting in September, you're back to face-to-face meetings.
Right. Okay. Well, that seems like still some time for some serious consideration and some adjustments. I don't think that's my personal opinion. That's not a too tight of a time frame, I would hope. So that all said, I just wanted to say one thing. I want to thank us, City Manager Ritzma and Deputy City Manager Chamberlain and Attorney Robinson for bringing us something that we could begin to react to and determine how we can fine tune it as a commission. And it seems to me that at this point, for everyone's general comfort level, it would be better to have an opportunity to provide those very specific suggestions to the team here, as whatever modifications may be included. And if that's the case, if we're going to table this, Attorney Robinson, does it have to be to a date certain?
Well, there's a couple of things. And now we're going to talk about parliamentary procedure. I don't believe that there has been a motion to take action on the resolution.
There hasn't.
So at this point, a motion to postpone to a date certain is out of order because there is no main motion on the floor.
Got it.
Now, what I'm hearing is a consensus perhaps from the commission is, I don't know that we want to take it up tonight. Let's take it up at a future meeting, whether that's the 19th of July or the first meeting in August. That's fine, but you can, basically the matter can die for the present meeting by just not bringing a motion to adoption before the board, before the commission. And then basically giving instruction to staff, please come up with something and we'll consider it at a future meeting.
Commissioner Pradel.
Sure. I don't know if this is possible, but I think for me, it would be helpful to kind of have a general temperature of people's preferences, like each person, where they are, because, I feel like we're getting pretty close with a solution. I mean, the hybrid model provides a number of opportunities for people, but, there still seems to be some hesitancy. So it's kind of hard to gauge where everybody is fully, I guess. The other thing would be helpful to hear from everybody is about maybe about what what things kind of leave to be desired, I guess. What things would help feel secure? What would be the circumstances to feel secure and feel ready to move forward? Because I think one of the things that I've noticed with a lot of municipalities is that it doesn't seem like a lot of municipalities have really set the groundwork for like, what are the conditions where people are truly fully ready to come back in person. So, like a good example, at the peak in the spring, the 14-day average was 135 cases per day. Today, the 14-day average is 4 cases per day in Kalamazoo County. In the peak, there were 109 people hospitalized. Today, in June, there were 17. So far in June, there are 0 hospitalizations in Kalamazoo County. I'm not saying that that's reason to not have fear, because there are some circumstances where we do have a lot of unknowns. A couple unknowns that we don't have is we still have an awful lot of young people out there who are 12 and younger who still can't get vaccinated. We still don't know fully what the Delta variant is going to do, or how that could impact things. So I don't know. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it would be helpful to know where everybody is. And then it would be helpful to know, for people who still have strong reservations, what would be the things that would make you feel better?
Manager Ritzma.
Yeah, thank you. Couple of things. One, I really appreciate this discussion and the feedback we're getting. One thought perhaps is to take the next COW meeting and have this as the main topic. That then we can get to what Commissioner Prado's seeking and get everything in effect on the table that need to be considered. So when we do work on it and bring it back, we have something that meets everyone's expectations.
Commissioner Urban.
In advance of that, there's one thing I just like to put in front of everybody is extending the live streaming to meetings besides just the City Commission and the Planning Commission. I would love it if it was extended to the Economic Development Corporation and the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority. Those are meetings that a lot of heavy stuff. It has big implications for the city occurs, and it's just about completely out of sight. Especially the hour that they have them in. It's convenient for the businessmen who can come to those meetings before they go to work, but it's hell on wheels for everybody else, at least people my age who are unemployed. So contrasting that with, say, the parking committee, the expense of having those live streamed, I think we can make some judgments about which ones we want to live stream, which ones we don't. And I'd like to see if we can come to some kind of mutual agreement. The best way to do that is to have a discussion on it. And the idea of doing this at the next committee of the whole meeting sounds like a good place to do it.
Thank you, Commissioner Urban. Attorney Robinson.
If I may, again, in response to that, the commission, I want to give you again some legal background, because there are differences in the various boards that are what I'm going to call city affiliated. There are boards that are created by the commission or by the city that are, I'm going to say, somewhat autonomous. A good example is the BRA and the EDC. Those are somewhat autonomous boards, even though you may appoint members. They can have a certain amount of autonomy to act and do their own thing. Another is the DDA and the DAGA boards. Another is the Foundation for Excellence boards. They are autonomous in large measure from city rules, so they make their own rules. And that's the way the statute that permits you to create those boards are written, so that there's a certain amount of autonomy by those entities. Okay. So for you to say, here's what I want you to do, I don't think you have that authority. I think you can urge those boards to do certain things, but I don't think that you can say as a city commission, thou shalt do this. Well, the other group of boards you have are those that are true city boards, like the Parks and Recreation Board, for instance. Zoning Board of Appeals, somewhat, although they're also under statute, they are basically, they work hand in glove with our planning department. So there are different, there's some legal niceties that surround some of these boards and the city commission's authority over them. So I want you to be aware of that.
Good.
Thanks, Attorney Robinson. Well, at this point, it seems to me, please correct me if it feels like I'm wrong here, that we don't have to move ahead and take action on this. I think that seems like a very reasonable suggestion, that if unless anyone's opposed to it, that we make this a committee of the whole topic and do that at our next meeting. That will have an opportunity for us to provide very specific feedback directly to our city staff in advance of that meeting, and have a robust discussion, during that meeting as it relates to helping create the parameters that we'd be looking for a modified recommendation coming back.
Again, Mayor, Clyde Robinson, City Attorney. The only thing that will come back to you then on the 19th is the extension of the committee of the whole process and adjusting the meeting calendar to accommodate committee of the whole through the end of the year. Because
great,
that does end at the end of July. And so you need to take action at your next meeting in order to extend that rule. So that will, while you can discuss it at the committee of the whole, that resolution or that portion of this resolution will be coming back to you on the 19th, so as to continue that rule and making adjustments to the calendar of meetings.
Okay, and that just requires one meeting, Attorney Robinson?
Yes.
Okay, all right, that's helpful clarification. Any other thoughts or input on the discussion at this point? All right, thanks, I appreciate that. Manager Risma.
Yeah, just one additional piece to this, and it wasn't addressed in what action was or recommendations were presented this evening, but I would also like to make the topic of physical safety part of the cow discussion. Chief Coakley's on the call here, and we have some ideas on some of the enhancements we may make to safety protocols. But it would certainly be good to have a discussion with the commission too around areas that they would like to see addressed in safety, physical safety.
Appreciate that. All right then. Now is the time then for commissioner comments. Commissioner Urban.
Thank you, Mayor Anderson. I wanted to take this opportunity to announce that I've decided not to seek re-election this November, but I feel I'm leaving the City Commission in good hands. I think we have an extraordinary set of city commissioners who still have 2 more years to go. And so as far as I can see, we have an attractive set of candidates to replace those of us who are stepping down. And I hope to recruit a few more candidates. But you'll do fine without me. But this is the 8th year of my commission, year on the commission. And I just want to review those 8 years, perhaps as a way of setting the context for whatever campaign issues arise this fall. Let's just look at where we are now relative to November of 2013, when I was first elected, and also when about exactly the time when our city manager took over from his predecessor. First of all, we have the new master plan. We have shared prosperity initiatives that are staffed and funded. That's a long way from where we were in 2014. Some of us will recall from that. Commission retreat in 2014. We also have the Foundation for Excellence, which we are a party to in creating. We have reduced unfunded OPED obligations, which is something that the most citizens probably really don't pay much attention to, but we're saving a lot of money and taking a lot of stress off of our administration by getting that under control. We now have a means of prioritizing budget items and tracking their performance. It's a performance priority-based budgeting. We have a resolution to the water dispute with the surrounding municipalities. It's a major milestone that I want to remind people about. That's happened in the last 8 years. We have the 311 call center. We have coming to the rescue of Parchment's water supply infrastructure. Now, no one predicted that, but the city utilities department, just with help from money from the state, really jumped on that and did a seamless job of converting that whole city's water supply system over to the city, to our supply to deal with the PFAS situation. Also, we have progress on engineering work to reduce odors from the wastewater treatment plant. That's ongoing. That's not finished, but it's more done on that since 1973, practically. We also have the rollout of the gun violence intervention program. That's kind of picking up steam again after some interruption during the COVID crisis. And then I want to mention the vastly expanded summer youth program, which is a huge thing for lots of our kids. And it means a lot to me because I used to worry about the summer slide myself, because I don't retain things real well. And I worried about what would happen by the end of August. So doing things that keep kids occupied and making the summer their summer instead of the summer just happening to them is wonderful. And another thing I want to mention is we now have a beautiful and easy to navigate roundabout in Kalamazoo at Harrison Circle, which is a real addition to traffic flow in that part of the city. And we have some more ice-free sidewalks. And there's more, and I'll talk about that later. But in view of what happened last summer, I think we are all fortunate to have both Eric and Patrice on the commission at the same time. I'm so grateful to them. They speak with truth to power in a stern but loving way. And their integrity is A1 with me. I wanted to minimize the likelihood of misperceiving them or misunderstanding them. I did not want to learn what they said or asked in those sub-quorum private meetings we had with the city manager and his staff up until early this year. That's why I wanted to have public committee of the whole meetings where all commissioners can be present and all hear at the same time in the person's own words what was said and what was asked. The trial period for that has ended, and we are continuing to meet that way, at least for the rest of this month. Hopefully, we're going to renew that officially at our next meeting. That is a convenient time we found to do that at, which is the same evening as our business meeting, just 2 hours earlier. Well, now I feel much less anxious having those committee of the whole meetings, because I feel I am much less likely to misunderstand or to be misunderstood. I imagine the other commissioners feel much the same way. I can't run for city commissioner again on the platform I ran on 4 years ago. The country and the city are in a different place now. Since last year, I've let myself become more aware of the structural racism in Kalamazoo, how pervasive it is, and how subtle it is, how deep it runs, and all the advantages white folk have so thoroughly absorbed, we don't realize we have them, or realize that our parents had them. We're like fish in the ocean, supported by a fluid that makes us nearly weightless, able to move about with ease. And I'm part of that. Having enjoyed those privileges, we're responsible for the consequences of those privileges. We can't go on living like this and expect things to improve in our country. After having compounded our original sin, which was treating people as property, enshrining it in our Constitution with the 3/5 rule, and again in ways ever more subtle and sometimes overt, right up to the present. We must begin again by asking, what is freedom? And for whom is it intended? I invite all of you to reflect on what that means for you and our country. I see I have work to do, but I must do it with loving kindness, which I'm a little short of right now. Just as there is idiot compassion, there is also idiot anti-racism. When we speak of transparency and accountability in connection with anti-racism, it has to be from the mindset of building trust. I invite you to reflect on what that means for you and for our country. This business about building trust. I feel that finding people to blame is not sufficient. It may be necessary, but it's not sufficient, and it's often not wise. The image of how I would like to proceed with anti-racism work personally comes from my image of Kuan Yin, who is the Chinese bodhisattva of compassion. She is said to have eyes in her fingertips, so that when she touches you, her awareness gives you exactly what you need in that moment. Now that's something to strive for in anyone who practices anti-racism work. In doing this work, I know I'm going to make mistakes, but that can no longer be an excuse for not doing it, for not learning to do it. I will learn from my mistakes, and I invite others to learn from mistakes as well. Anti-racism is a practice, not a profession. To my fellow commissioners and the candidates for the commission, please celebrate all the good things the city has begun and nurture their success. And I'm kind of picking up from that list I started reading earlier. But right now I'm thinking specifically about promoting Dorla Bonner to be the city's Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and the formation of the city's Civil Rights Board, and the work of Patsy Moore, Captain Coakley, and Vernon Payne in reconstituting the city's Public Safety Review and Advisory Board. Well begun, much more to do. I hope I can become effective as a white anti-racist advocate and exemplar as a private citizen. I believe I can move the needle further in the right direction from there, actually. I'll be looking for allies in the white community while seeking to earn the trust of all communities. I want you to hold me to it. I don't want to let you down.
Thank you, Commissioner Urban. Commissioner Cunningham.
Well, I can't start my statements off without saying it's been an honor to serve with you, Jack. Please forgive me by calling you by your first name, but I have grown a fond relationship with you over the years, and I truly appreciate your words of wisdom, the years of experience you brought to the table, passion, the willingness to talk, listen, and even something that I find hard and sometimes difficult myself is where I take a stance and I have to remove myself from it because obviously my view has changed. And that's something that I've seen you do time and time again. What that means to me is that it's about the people and not about ourselves. And I've seen you do that selflessly over the years in this community. One, had a jewel with you serving. Two, will be at a great loss without you being there for these years to come. So thank you again for your service. I'm sure you'll still be active in many different ways. And I look forward to spending time with you in those engagements. So, I want to say thank you to Chief Coakley taking a phone call between our meetings today to help me out with some stuff that I observed in the community. Being willing to take a random call, then being willing to make decisions and move resources as needed. I truly appreciate those efforts. I also wanted to highlight Attorney Robinson. I want to say thank you. I know oftentimes I'm quick to test, challenge, push you in certain ways, but your work on the Juneteenth fireworks, I just want to highlight, that your vision was in alignment with our culture that we're trying to achieve here in the community. So I appreciate that. That's all. Honorable Mayor David Anderson. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Cunningham. Commissioner Knott.
Just briefly, we had a caller earlier, I think it was during one of the first public hearings, that accidentally was thrown into the mix. And so I'll just clear up what that caller was talking about, because I've worked with the two women that the caller was referencing. So earlier today, in my official capacity at Equality Michigan, I learned of two local women. They're married. They've been fostering children for the last 3 years. the kids are, I believe, 4 and 3, so they were very little when they came into these women's lives. They're going through the process of formal adoption, and the contractor for the county of Kalamazoo, the guardian, there's a technical term, but it's escaping me right now. The guardian, the attorney for these children, during the court hearing that happened recently, could not oppose or make a recommendation for adoption, referencing the Bible and the fact that these 2 women were living a homosexual lifestyle, blah, blah, blah. I see Commissioner Hess throwing her head back, and that's exactly how I felt. So there was some mobilization earlier to have folks call the county because they are meeting at the same time as us tonight. I've been working with different court bodies to figure out the hierarchy or the chain of command to see what recourse we have as it relates to this individual not putting the children's best interest front and center, and instead allowing for his religious convictions to help or harm rather the determination on what's best for these kids. So that's what that caller was calling about, and I just thought I would lift that up because that happened today, and I know that there were folks calling into the county commission. I had a conversation with Chair Hall, and she was expecting some mobilization this evening. So that's all I have.
That's helpful, Bert. I really appreciate that clarification, Commissioner Knott. Commissioner Pradel.
Sure. Let's start off by just wanted to thank Commissioner Knott, Commissioner Urban, Commissioner Cunningham. Thank you guys for your service. For a relatively newbie here on the commission, I guess I'm not so much anymore now that we're already up to another election cycle, but it really puts into perspective, your length of service, and this is not for the light at heart, if you will. It takes a lot of resilience, a lot of passion, and appreciate your guys' service. So it'll be very interesting to see the whole right side of the dais transform here come November. Just also wanted to thank people for calling in, irregardless of their views on coming back in person. I will admit I had kind of mentally prepared myself for the fact that we're coming back July 19th. And in that regard, I mentally prepared myself to be in favor of that. But that also came with the need to figure out ways to keep my family safe. I have 3 young boys at home, all under age 6. They can't be vaccinated. And with the Delta variant, I'm, very concerned about that. I have a number of families who have health conditions that put them at extreme high risk as well. And, so I had kind of thought about how do I go back to what we need to do to be in person, but keep my family safe. And, I can imagine perhaps the frustration from Jim, your team, from City Attorney Robinson, Jeff, Laura, the team that put a lot of work and thought into this. But, I do know one thing in my short time here that I've seen is that although maybe frustrating at the time because you guys have put a lot of work into something, I know in these instances where we work on things maybe just a little bit longer, that usually a lot greater product comes out of it, and that we're all better for it because we've done that. And so, I appreciate your patience while we kind of sort out and work out how to keep everybody safe and, reconcile all of our differing needs as a commission. I don't know if anybody saw this today, but today Governor Whitmer announced a proposal for $150 million from federal stimulus to devote to local parks and local trails. That's huge. I really hope that we can see that through fruition. That's in addition to her proposing $250 million for state-owned properties and parks in the state. So that's $400 million proposed by the governor to devote to public spaces for our communities and for our state. So if you have the ability to write your legislators or advocate for that, I think that's a huge opportunity for our community. And so I hope from a city staff perspective, we can continue to kind of monitor that and see what potential can come out of that as well. And then just a reminder as well, that kind of leads to the next point as well, is that, we've talked about this $38.8 million of federal stimulus. And I think I heard in the last that there were like 900 people who had committed or submitted feedback to that. And that's fantastic. That's a great sign that people are focused on that. But just a reminder to people, we're only accepting the feedback through July 18th. And so if you go to kalamazooCity.org/ARP, there's both the English and a Spanish version, a form of that survey. And then also there's 19 sites on that page where people can actually pick up a paper copy to submit as well. So, really encourage people to do that. You still have some time, another 12 days or so to submit that. But along those lines, as you're submitting feedback, beyond just thinking about the ideas, I just really want to encourage people to think big, right? To think beyond just ourselves even, thinking through that maybe there are opportunities where if state funding comes down to support local parks, that we have opportunity to combine that to do something more bigger. Maybe there's opportunities for us to work with, our public school system to think on strategies about trauma with our youth, and or maybe there's opportunities to look at us to work with our county to partner on bigger and broader ideas of where we can do our part and they can do our part, but we move the needle together on something that we all collectively believe in. And then also just reminding people too that there are opportunities that are going to linger and exist out there, whether it be infrastructure plans that are coming down the pipeline that we might be able to invest in our community, or whether it's more state sharing funds that we receive to support things as well. It's not just limited to $38.8 million is what I'm saying. I'm saying, like, dream big, think big, imagine how we can move the needle together as a region or as a community. So I just wanted to share that. And then I also just wanted to share as well, I was driving around with the severe weather we've had here recently, and public service crews, you saw some of the trucks like driving through these giant flooded streets. I saw one resident who got stuck in her car and is wading up to her waist in water, and the public services person is out trying to help her get out of that situation and remediate the drains and everything. And it's been both hot and horrible weather with flooding, and just really want to thank those crews for being out there and serving our community and making our community work. And then lastly, just a reminder to those who are considering running for city commission, we're running out of time. So if you have a heart for this work and want to step off and launch from the legacy of the three commissioners who have served a significant amount of time in this body, please seriously consider it. The worst that can happen is that the public tells you no this time, but the best that can happen is that you maybe lift up an issue or provide a new voice that wasn't a part of the equation before. And so it hurts to lose, but what hurts even worse is just wondering if you could have done something, but you never tried. So I would encourage people to really consider that. Reach out to us if you have any questions about serving, or just want some advice. I don't care about your political persuasion or what issues you really are most concerned about. I'd love to give you my honest advice, and encourage anybody who's looking to run to please consider doing so. I always think that the larger the group of people who run, the voters win, because it gives them greater choice and it brings better diversity of voices and to the equation. And I think the voters, really had a great opportunity with 15 or so people running in 2019. And there's been some years that we've had as few as 5. And so, really encourage people to run. Thank you much. Have a good night.
Thank you, Commissioner Pradel. Lots of good information. In particular, I do want to highlight what you mentioned as far as the cutoff time for feedback coming up here and people getting in touch about those funds. Commissioner Hess.
Just really briefly, Meister Eckhart has said that if the only prayer you ever said in your whole life was thank you, that would suffice. So thank you to all the commissioners who have spoken previously for this opportunity to education tonight. I feel like I've been a part of a great education here at this meeting this evening, because it's been so amazingly diverse in topics. But I do want to thank the folks who showed up here for us. Director Baker, who came in and gave us education about what's happening with our stormwater. Chief Coakley, who is always here and who helped us understand the issues with Kalamazoo Public Schools. Christina Anderson, city planner, who has really helped move the city into its next iteration. Sharon Ferraro, for your willingness and your commitment to preserving the historical nature of the city. And Attorney Robinson for just wisdom. And then Jack, I'm going to miss you. You
brought me into knowing how to do this work. And I appreciate you. I'm going to miss your sense of history. Like, look at everything. I'm still going to call you and figure out what you know. You know, I miss I will miss your sense of community. You really do feel like you have charge of this place with us all together. And your ability to educate is beyond compare. I'll miss your wisdom. And I appreciate your service. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hess. Vice Mayor Griffin.
Thank you, Mayor Anderson. I'll start off. Thank you, Commissioner Urban, for your very kind words. We still have some work to do, so I will save my words for you when it's time. But thank you very much. I want to go back to a comment that was made at the first public hearing, Remy Harrington, in respects to supporting the zoning changes, but really just want to double down on that, supporting of economic changes as well, that it's very important and that we continue to utilize those opportunities to be equitable through and through, and not just the times that may be a little bit more easier than others. Also, Shona, you had lifted up an event that's taking place, and I was trying to write it down, but I think I may have gotten the days incorrect. If you could email me, and this goes for anybody, if there's any events or anything that are taking place, I can't promise you that I will be there or that I will even see your email on time. I'm trying, but that's the best way to let me know about things, griffinp@kalamazooCity.org. I also want to take the time to congratulate Gwendolyn Hooker. For all of you who may know, she does a lot in the community with justice against bullying in schools, Hope Through Navigation, helping other people exceed. She also has everything to do with the tiny homes that will be coming here. But she was recognized, her organization was recognized by Governor Whitmer last month, at the end of last month. So I definitely want to highlight her and thank her for all of the work that she does effortlessly and has been doing for quite some time. And I guess the last thing I would say is for our community at large, as we look to, I don't even know how to put that into words. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, right? And so as it relates to SRO officers, if you have thoughts on the data that can be collected and what we can do on our end, please submit those thoughts and feelings. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. So, Jack will have lots of time to talk yet, so I'm not going to get on that this evening. So I just want to say that now that we do have the COW meeting in advance, even though we get a little break, our time together on usually Monday evening starts at 5 o'clock, and which it did tonight. So we get to spend a nice long stretch of many hours together between those two meetings. That said, I want to thank those of you who volunteer to do this work together and try to work together. I appreciate getting to spend this time with smart people who care about their community. So thank you, everyone. Keep your hearts open. I love you, Kalamazoo. We're adjourned.